Dude, it was 3 hours of surfing.
I honestly don't even like calling surfing a sport.
Everyone's like, call the cops.
Whoa.
Get
What did you
out.
do, JJ?
Thank you guys for tuning in. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to Seager Storytime. We're your hosts, Mattson, Case, and Elliott, and we're the co-founders of Seager Company.
Okay, the clap.
We should get one of those little director things at some point.
Yeah.
The actual clappers.
We used it for our very first
Did we?
ever story time. And
Wow.
then we never used it again.
Do we rent it or something?
I don't know. I don't know how
Let's
we
buy
got that.
one. Let's buy a toy one or something. Or you can 3D print one.
That would be sick.
Thanks for bringing those, by the way.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
I wanted to look up the machine. Did you say it was Toy Box?
Yeah, it's called a toy box.
Could you Google that real quick? I wanted to see
Are
what
they
that looked
fragile?
like. Starting off
Or are
quick.
they?
No, these guys are pretty. I mean, these guys are pretty solid. I mean,
They're so
it's
sick.
funny if they do break. I just solder them back together.
Wow.
So I mean, you can just use a soldering gun and they just get
Oh,
hot. You just
yeah.
melt the. You can see like this hand broke off.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, when you print like from the ground up, right? So
No, do a 3D printer.
you build this.
Sorry.
You build this basically support. The printer itself will automatically like build supports so that it can print like it can't just print in the air, right? It's gonna print like stacked. So it stacks from the bottom up, almost like you remember those sandcastles you used to
trippy.
build?
Yeah.
when you were a
Yeah,
kid? Like,
yeah. It's like that.
yeah, it's like that kind of thing. But I mean, this was 20 hours to print.
20 hours? You just
So
hit play and then
you
just
hit
wait
play,
there?
dude, and go to sleep. Wake up in the morning. And
That's
wow,
so
this is really-" you know. So
That's gotta be
it's
sick for your kid, too.
dude, it's pretty cool. He's pretty into horses, so I've been
dope.
printing a bunch of those. Like, I stole some stuff from Tangled. Just started printing those.
Nice.
Tangled?
You know?
What do you mean you
Yeah.
stole
Yeah,
it?
you know,
just,
like the
got
Tangle
code?
horse. That no, you can just find it online. You can find like
The image?
yeah, you can find. They're called like OBJ or STL files,
Huh.
and you can find that stuff like online. You can find like waves and like
That's
probably
cool.
deer horn. You know, like everything.
All that stuff?
Damn.
Yeah, and then there's like the full engineering nerd side of it, where you could be like, I want to build this part for
Yeah.
you know, like the
That's
back
what
of
my dad was
truck
doing.
or whatever.
For
Like,
sure.
that stuff's really cool.
I know.
Figure that out.
I remember when I think one of the first times I learned about 3D printing is because there was some news article about like 3D printed guns. And they're like, people are printing guns. I was like, holy shit. What is going on right now?
Can you put like a
you remember
3D
that?
printed bullet in a gun?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could print a 3D gun. Allegedly, and you can just.
right.
I'm like thinking back, I'm like, I don't know, but you can put live.
Okay,
ammo
here's
in
how
that
you
shit.
get a gun.
I'm
You
pretty
buy a
sure.
3D printer.
Because I think, like you're saying, the files that you can just like go online and download the file and just print it, right? Like if you have a printer, you're just like get that, and you don't have to do anything.
That's the future of Canada. As they,
What?
they bar guns from Canada.
Oh.
Bar guns. People are just going to buy 3D printers and print them.
Fuck yeah,
So it's
that's
like,
sick.
it's just one of those things. I don't think that you
You can't
I don't-
stop
you
it.
can't
right?
stop it.
unless you just don't allow the production of those. But
right. I mean, I think I don't know. It's such a controversial issue. It's so crazy. But
I know
I
it's
think
sick
like,
though.
You kind of got to educate kids like in general, because I mean that's the thing with my kid, like with the toys and stuff. I'm trying to like make him creative.
Yeah,
So it's like, even though he's only 2 and probably has no idea what I'm talking about or doing, there's like this sense of like giving him something that no one else has. That
Yeah.
like kind of gives him a perspective that no one else would have.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you broke the toy, you can get the soldering gun out and you're sitting there like sweating it together,
Yeah.
and it's like fuming, and it's just a different approach
yeah,
to like,
that's sick.
like I don't know. We've also tried to be like, oh here, have this wood stick, like just that's a toy, just as much
Yeah, yeah.
so as like making something. You
Yeah.
don't have to make it complex, but I think that's just like a cheat code,
Yeah.
in some ways of life, because I think a lot of times, like, I mean, just now me being a first time dad, like it's so crazy to see a lot of my friends and the way they've raised their kids and things, kind of coming into the game a little late. Like things are just, I don't know. It just seems a little bit like, especially nowadays, it seems like there's opportunity to kind of like step out and kind of go in a direction that other people aren't.
Yeah,
I just feel like everything's kind of gotten so cookie cutter.
yeah,
And
That's so true.
and that's just a generation because of the internet, really. Like all you guys we could all just look stuff up and be like,
yeah.
how do I make a 3D da, 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 da,
Yeah.
and it's there. And so
Yeah.
that aspect of things is great. It's like, it's kind of love hate, because you have access to things you never would have, but then at
Yeah.
the same time, like
You get funneled though.
you get funneled and you kind of become just like the next guy.
yeah,
And so I don't know. That's something I think my wife and I are both like trying super hard, is just to like raise him with like, much bigger parameters, allow him to do things that like I don't think most 2-year-olds get to do. And we're just taking him to the
cool.
beach every day, and that kind
Sick.
of
Just
lifestyle
like
is
living the
more nice.
lifestyle that you kind of had as a kid, and like a little creativity and being able to run around and not, that's dope.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's kind of like I'm trying to set that tone, and I feel like fortunate enough, like in the last 2 years with COVID, like to be able to be home as much as I've been home, and
Nice.
just like to shift the gears from really like our lifestyle and focus on like just being a family and kind of creating a little bit of our own pace. And it's a trip. It's like it's just so much different than I expected it to be, but at the same time, like been such a really rewarding thing, you know.
Well, you said you were late to the game earlier in the childbearing stuff. What did you mean by that?
Well, I'm 38, you know, so I feel like a lot of my friends have 4 kids, and they're
okay.
like, you know, their kids are 12, 13, like they're kind of in that phase of life.
Yeah.
Whereas like, you know, I'm watching my son walk for the first time, like start to talk and things. And so I've been able to kind of see the way some of my friends have raised their kids and just looked at it like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I feel like it wasn't like necessarily wrong for us to be in the position we're in. Like I traveled a lot, surfed a lot, like spent a lot of time, like really, really enjoying my marriage. And so we have a really strong relationship because of that. But I think like I was in, you know, we've had like a pretty gnarly, you know, kind of, I was in a plane crash in 2017.
Holy shit.
Wow.
My wife too. And so
Like a commercial plane. Big ass plane.
no, I can show you a photo.
I would love that.
Yeah, it was a Cessna.
You might be able to airplay it. Or no, that would fuck it up, wouldn't it?
I could send it to you if you want to.
Yeah, we can maybe pass it around.
Yeah,
Where was this?
Lake Isabella, actually, near Kern Valley.
What? You crashed there?
Yeah, have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we crashed there.
Yeah. Wow.
It was
Gnarly.
crashed on the east side of the lake. There's a little airport there, and they don't actually have fuel at the airport, so it's like pretty remote because you can't fuel your plane. So a lot of people just fly in, touch down, and usually leave. But there's a couple of hangars, and I had a friend that had the plane in the hangar, and so we went up to shoot a promotional video.
Oh, wow.
Shit.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Crazy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's mangled.
Yeah, it's been so it's 2017, 420, 2017. So 420 has a pretty like negative feeling for me.
Sorry for the beanie.
Wow.
So, it's just scarring beanie.
Yeah. No. It's all good. I'm only joking.
Dude.
But no,
Wow.
it's
that is gnarly.
yeah, it's been about 5 years. It's crazy how quickly 5 years goes by. And you know, I was talking about this, and we did this video for the Inertia, and I was telling those guys like, you know, my dad used to always say this thing it was like a Clint Eastwood quote. It was like improvise, adapt, and overcome. You know, like I think it was in one of his like, I don't know, spaghetti Western movies or something. And I think like when you get hurt like that and you crash, my wife broke her neck, back, and arm.
Wow.
I broke my hand in, I don't know, 3 places. Like this finger doesn't go straight, doesn't close. So,
Dude.
So
Look at my
holy
pinky.
shit.
I got
dude.
It's
Yeah,
pinky,
see,
dude.
that's what's up. It's funny. It's funny how many people you cross paths with fingers. You shake hands with people. You're like,
Yeah,
oh
whoa.
shoot, that's kind of weird.
Crossing each other's pinkies.
So that was just such a wild time. Like I'd say probably my wife more like a year, but for me about 7 months of like just straight rehab, physical therapy, like every day. Changed a lot for
I
us.
bet.
And I think like going through that traumatic accident like kind of put things in perspective of like what can we and what can't we do, and what's the rest of our life look like, you know? I questioned whether I'd surf again, whether I, you know, kind of didn't know what I was doing. And about 3 or 4 months after the crash, I started taking more photos and shooting video more. And so I got hooked up with, I was close friends with the Stopniks, the guys that do Cycle Zombies.
Yeah.
And so they invited me to go over to Japan with them. So 4 months after the crash, I flew over there and shot with them. And I was like, oh, I could do this. At least I'm still active. And I was like limping around, had a cane and stuff. But I was able to shoot most of the trip and like kind of got a bunch of cool stuff and had a really good time. So I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll pursue photography more.
Yeah.
And that was like a focus. So when I got back from Japan, I went and met with Igloo, the cooler company.
Yeah.
And my friend Brad Blankenship was working there. And
We know him.
Do you guys know Brad?
Didn't we meet him?
Yeah, he's
I feel like I recognize that name.
he's the
That
president
name,
of
that name
Quicksilver
is
now.
from
Or am I tripping?
MXC.
What?
Remember that show?
Yeah,
Most
the
Extreme
Japanese one?
Eliminated.
There's a Brad Blankenship in McGee.
Yeah.
No, really?
No way.
No, I don't think his name is Brad, but the guy that's like, you know that show?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's like, I'm Brad Blankenship, and this is MXC. And you're like, get it on. That guy's
That is hilarious.
Dude, that's so
The,
funny.
the
His
guy that
name-
we know at Igloo is Ryan Kingman.
Yeah.
We've talked to him.
I don't even know if
briefly or
he's still
something.
there anymore.
No,
Yeah.
he left.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gone.
Came and went.
No, it's good. I mean, he was. I think he was there for almost a year, but he was there. He came in with a guy. There's this guy named Brian. We call him BG, but he came from Element, and Brad hired Brian. So Brian came in from Element, and then he hired Ryan Kingman because Kingman used to work for Element, so that they knew each other from that. So there's synergy there, and Kingman came in and did a lot of their licensing. So it was really cool when he was there. I was always hoping that he'd license and get to do more cool things, but Igloo kind of like diversified a lot of what he had to do. So he ended up doing like NASCAR, Hello Kitty, the whole thing.
Yeah,
and so it was a bit of
corporate.
They're huge.
Corporate stretch. Yeah, they're a really big business. They have 1,400 employees and like a 2 million square foot.
Igloo does?
Wow.
No shit.
Yeah.
Where's their?
Holy
Are they
crap.
in
Katy,
California?
Texas.
Oh, they're in Texas.
Yeah, Katy, Texas.
Wow.
But the marketing office is right
Here.
next to John Wayne.
I had no idea that they were that big.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now
I know
you
it's
mean-
I know it's like Yeti and Igloo, but I just didn't realize.
Is
Yeah.
Igloo bigger?
Yeah.
Much bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Igloo is
I mean-
bigger than Yeti?
They,
do you mean?
They've just been around
Mind-blowing.
forever.
Oh, really?
I mean, way
Yeah.
longer than Yeti.
Yeah.
I don't know. How long's Igloo been around?
Like since like the 60s probably.
Oh, really? I mean, that little flip one.
Yeah, the Playmate.
Yeah, Playmate. You can't beat that.
Playmate.
No one else does anything like that.
No, yeah, and that was when I was there. I was like, dude, this could be its own sub brand. This is so cool.
The
And
Playmate.
the Playmate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was like
So sick.
that was the cooler.
Was that you that did the Thalia thing too?
Yeah, well,
Which one?
that was through Brad. Brad
Okay.
like linked that up. but
Actually, I don't know. Do you work for Eagle?
not anymore.
Oh,
no,
okay, you did.
yeah, I was like freelance as 1099 and just like basically a subcontractor for them.
Mhm.
Was shooting photos for them
Okay.
primarily, and then connecting dots, on things like they wanted to be really big in surf, and Brad brought in this idea with his brother-in-law who actually still works there. He's like their main designer. And they invented a cooler that was biodegradable, and it's called EcoCool or
What?
Recool.
The whole thing?
The whole cooler is biodegradable. It's a pulp base, so it's like remember those things you would go to like In and Out
What?
to fill
Yeah.
those little containers.
Yeah.
They basically melt those down and build a cooler out of it.
How long would that take to biodegrade? Like 100 years?
No, it's quick. It's
So you put it in the heat and just like.
yeah. It's like I think
It
once it
kinda
gets
looks like cardboard a little bit.
it's like cardboard.
It's like
Yeah.
paper mache.
Yeah,
right?
it's exactly. It's
Yeah.
like that.
Oh,
like, yeah.
what?
So it's a trippy cooler, but they did this
I love
partnership
paper
with the Ecology Center here in San Juan, the
Yeah.
Ecology Center,
Love the Ecology
and
Center.
they built out like this whole idea of like, okay, we're gonna compost our coolers, and then we'll like take the compost and we'll make whatever, like we'll feed our chickens, and that will basically be the food that ends up on your plate.
Yeah.
That was like the big Igloo thing. So they launched that in I think 2020 maybe or something like that, maybe 2019. And now they've done like 3 renditions of it, and they've kept that in surf. They like brought on Rob Machado as their like face of it. And
That makes sense.
I got kind of put into the marketing aspect of that, and so
Okay, that's
that
cool.
was kind of like that's still been my connection to the brand. Still like
Sick.
an ambassador essentially, but the photo aspect of it has kind of slid back, and it's a good thing for me. I just never wanted to go in-house full time with them.
Yeah.
And that was something that like I was always like, hey, I'll shoot whatever you guys need me to shoot, wherever you need me to shoot it. But yeah, I just didn't want to commit to the reality of like, this is my job. I work for Igloo.
Yeah, full
Yeah.
force.
Yeah, it was just never really something even crossed my radar. And I think I could have like at some point gone to them and been like, hey, I'd love to work with you guys more. But I think, that would have been like unfair to the other things I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so that's like the balance of it, where it's like
For sure.
photography kind of started to take precedent because I couldn't surf and I couldn't do things for the brands that I had already been working for a long time. And so they basically said, hey, like if you want to shoot for us, we'll kind of open that opportunity. And then now it's kind of gone back probably the other way, where it's like now surfing's come back
Wow.
and sponsors have come back, and super fortunate to have like
Yeah.
opportunity in like it's a pretty crazy time,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to have like now working for Rain and kind of riding for Rain, and they want, they kind of want both. They're like, hey, if you could shoot some photos, that's cool. And if you could,
Yeah.
ride for us, that's cool. And that's kind of, I feel like the base of where I'm at now is like, if I have like synergy with the brand, yeah, sure. Like let's like work
Make it
together
happen.
and make it happen. I think the hard part is like, and you guys probably know, is like you tell someone what you need, and then like to go and get that's very different. Right? It's like, yeah, we need some photos. Like, well, okay, then you got to put the trip together. There's like so much that goes into
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
To create it like is much different than probably what you're thinking originally in the conversation. And so I think I've come to that conclusion where it's like, hey, like if it just flows, and like I can go shoot with like some of my friends, and that's
Keep it
like,
local.
fitting, keep
Yeah.
it local, keep it kind of like, just like relevant to the brand, like just being able to work with like guys that I've known for years, like the Godowskises, or I don't know, just like Mitch Absher, or some of these people that are like really like friends to me too. So that's easy. It's like way easier than like stretching myself like in the cooler world of like having to work in more of the corporate scene of like, hey, could you go to this event in like, I don't know, Texas and hang out at this rodeo? Like, I'd love to do that, but I'm just not as connected.
For sure.
I'm curious too, like pre-crash, obviously plane crash, like current photography world, were you always just a sponsored surfer, like pro surfer world? Or what? What did that look like?
Well, so like I always say it this way. Like I feel like for me, you know, going to San Clemente and being around a lot of pro surfers, like I always kind of had people that I looked up to as a surfer, because I didn't grow up. I grew up in Riverside, and I moved, you know, when I was in 5th grade, I think, to San Juan, and then middle school here, and didn't start surfing till I was 15, almost 16, and so it was like my sophomore summer that I really got hooked into it, and like to see, you know. Like there was really 2 veins of surfing at that time. There was this resurgence of like kind of like traditional longboards and culture, and like there was kind of that, and then there was the mainstream, like a lot of those guys that were pro shortboarders still went to school then. You know, so being at San Clemente, you had like the Godowskises, the Nate Yeomans, like a lot of the guys that were, you know, kind of like on the world tour pretty much, or going towards that direction, and that was something that never really interested me. Like their surfing was amazing, and now I'm more interested in it now than I was at that age in high school. That didn't really, kind of felt more like athletic than it felt creative.
Yeah. And
so when like Thomas Campbell kind of came into the scene and made the Seedling, that was really like the time for me that I gravitated into surfing and was like, wow, there's this art form within it. And it was, you know, it was kind of more blue collar. It was like guys that shaped and build boards and wanted to have like conversation outside of the water about things that like really, really like, not necessarily, they weren't on the, you know, they're on the same path, but they weren't in the same lane.
Yeah.
Like kind of like motorcycles would be a good example of that. You know, it's like, I've always thought it's kind of odd that like a brand like Deus would put like a surfboard on a motorcycle. Because I've always thought like a motorcycle is just a totally different means of transportation. I didn't grow up in Indonesia, so I don't really get that.
Yeah.
Whereas like you saw a guy on the freeway on a motorcycle, I'd be like taking photos of him. Like, this guy's gnarly. You know, like, what is he doing? This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So it's just a very different culture, but not that they're not the same, you know, like you have guys like
same kind of guy.
Yeah, same kind of guy.
Yeah.
It's like there's very, very creative people within the motorcycle world and skateboarding, and like, you know, those lanes, we're all kind of heading down the same highway.
Yeah.
And so it's like a really cool thing to be, you know, kind of like in those conversations. That's what I've really enjoyed. Like when I rode for Maddox for, you know, a couple of years, I got to work with Daewon Song, Mark Johnson, and some of those guys that were like legends of skateboarding. But what I really enjoyed most about being around them is how creative they were. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, Daewon and I would talk all day about how he thought negatively about like the skate contest world, and just like I would say the same thing about the surf contest world, because it's just a poor representation of the culture. Yeah. You know, and it's unfortunate that's the case. Like they have the opportunity to make it really like, you know, true to what it is, but they kind of want to tell a story of like, hey, look at these guys, they work out and
for sure
they train and
trying to make it more of a sport, and
they're trying to make it like something that spectators would do.
Yeah, it looks like they're pushing longboarding in a good direction, or trying to.
I was just about to say that like you're part of and that goes off of that what you just said. You're part of this like era, which hats off to you. You came before this whole like longboard like surgence that's like coming out now, of this like marketable longboarding thing, which I think is fine too. I think it's great for the sport and whatever, if you want to call it a sport, but you were pushing something totally different. You were going for like a creative thing that you just enjoyed, and it worked. So
thanks.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
I think I just, you know, it's just one of those things that like as a surfer, like I've learned to appreciate everybody's lane, and I think like, you know, being around like some of my peers, like in some ways I've been more inspired by people that I thought kind of growing up like, oh, that guy's not really into the same things I'm into. But then you get around him and there's certain things you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like he's passionate, he's at the beach every day or whatever. Like just because he rides, you know, the boards I wouldn't ride doesn't necessarily mean I can't be inspired by him. Yeah. You know? And so I think like as I've let down that kind of like guard, I've started to realize a bit more of just like, you know, surfing is about having fun, and just like a lot of things in life, you can like really channel like just good relationships by just, you know, kind of being a little bit more like open to it and not so jaded. And I think it inspires like creativity. And I think that's like what comes back to me is like, wow, these guys are kind of are looking for things that I wouldn't necessarily be looking for in the way that they surf. And I can appreciate that in the sense of just like, wow, it actually is challenging to do what they do, you know? And so that's why I said I think I've become more interested in the shortboard world. It's like, you know, a lot of those guys, like they kind of fall off the tour and they can't figure out what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And they don't know who they're like, wow, I've been an athlete my whole life. And oh my goodness, like I'm not relevant. And so they end up like going down these different routes. And, and then you start to realize like, wow, they're just as normal as anybody else.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so that's what's super sweet is like you see, I don't know, you see one of those guys that was like a tour phenom and now they just surf lowers and you paddle out with them and you're like, dude, you're just as normal as anybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's cool. Like that's like a really great thing about living in this area is there's so much talent. And I think like I'm starting to kind of feed off of that more as like I see even me getting older in a sense of like just kind of a little bit more wisdom of like picking the right days, trying to pick the right board, like trying to be at the right spot. And there's a real science to that. And it's like,
Totally.
it's really cool to be around guys that are on those same that same track of like rather than surfing all day every day like a Grom, it's like, oh, when's the best times to go? Or when's, like just like probably you guys do when you travel or do a trip. It's like, well, is the weather going to be good? It's going to be 120. Like what's kind of the vibe we're going for here, right? And
yeah, it's an art.
And to find that and like being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
you know, so
it is fun to wake up and look at, or not even wake up, like plan out. You see like a swell forecast and you're like, oh, that hits this beach because I know I journaled that earlier. This is why it breaks there better. You know, that kind of stuff's super fun. And you can do that up and down the whole entire coast. Like, you know, if it's
pretty sick.
Yeah, there's so many different variables and that's what makes it fun. So I definitely see that.
I have so much work to do on that still. I love the idea of it, but I'm like, well, I'm starting from pretty much like 0.01%. I know like, I can't even say I know anything, to be honest. I get what is being read, but that's about it.
But that is the fun part of it, though.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, you start to learn, you're like, oh, I get it now. I read that buoy, and then this says that.
It's so sick. When people are good at it, you know, like you'll obviously talked about it a bunch, you know, the most out of the office. And then I know Tram is always on that, you know, and he's like, oh, that beach, like, don't go there. And then you end up going, he's like, it's going to be great. And you get there and it's great. And you're like, dude, you're like a wizard, bro.
Yeah. You just log it in the terms of like
journaling
it.
Exactly. And then you know,
and you can keep figuring it out.
Yeah, it's so sick.
It's fun.
I know.
But obviously, if you want to stay local, it's like you just
go to the same spot every day. But it's nice. I mean, you can use your time wisely at that point. Like if you're just, like you said, you can't just go to the water all the time. Like a lot of people got work or, you know, other things going on.
Yeah, it's a 99% of the people like have to go in a certain time.
Exactly.
Like, oh,
I got 8
today,
7 to 9, you know, or whatever.
Good today, like
I'm utterly surprised by the people that are in the water midday. Like, where the fuck are these people?
It's COVID.
I always think about that.
It's different now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
different.
I'm there too. So
it's like, everyone's got a different situation that can put them there.
And on Wednesday, it's just crowded.
I know.
Are you a big surfline guy? Like, are you tracking that? Or you don't even look at it?
Not surfline, not so much surfline. I mean,
Magic Seaweed or
Magic Seaweed's probably a little more accurate. I use that Windy app a lot.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Windy's good. There's a bunch of swell models. Buoys are kind of the thing to look at, really, and you know, it depends too, like what time of year. I feel like this time of year is like it's always kind of going through the transition of like south swells, north swells, and there's just a lot of variables. I feel like this is the best time to travel, like from April to really like July. It's like that time of year where I'm always like, oh, where should we go this time, you know? And so in the past, I mean, we've done a lot of like, you know, trips all over the world, but then I think now, you know, I'm kind of more in tune with like the idea of driving places and just kind of trying to be, you know, kind of more aware of like, see how even just California, like you're talking, there's so much.
Yeah.
And there's just such opportunity like to pursue, you know, kind of just like, I don't know, finding things in different ways. I think that's one of the biggest things. It's not really so much like where you're going, but how you get there. You know, I think like, you know, I've always like kind of been like, oh, I need to get up to San Francisco to chase this OB swell, and like I used to just drive like a madman, like all night and get there and surf. And now it's like, well, you know, it'd be cool if we took 2 days and we like stopped the Big Sur, like hung out in Santa Cruz.
Exactly.
And I think that's like more the pace I'm on now. And I think creatively too, it's kind of like lend to more like great, but to me, better photos and like
I bet,
and more content where you're just like, because if you kind of like slow down, you
smell the flowers, right? That's the whole saying.
Totally.
You know, literally.
Are you primarily a longboarder? Like,
yeah, I mean that's kind of like I feel like what's lent, like, well, because of the seedling, and I kind of started on longboard, and then I feel like for me as I progressed at surfing, I just had the opportunity to like. I had a couple friends on my street that I grew up with, kind of like you guys growing up all together. And we all went to school at St. Clemente, but we lived in San Juan. And so that was like, we were within the district, but we lived kind of away from the beach. So we were always like, eh. So when I got rides, like I'd get rides to the beaches that those guys went to. They were a couple of years older than me. And so I'd like load up my longboard usually because it was like, oh, I can give you a ride to Doheny, or I can give you a ride to Sano. And then like, that became kind of like the everyday thing.
Got it.
My senior year. Then once I got my license, like the end of my junior year, I was like, oh, I can go all over. But I didn't really start getting into like other boards until I started riding for Chris Christensen.
mm-hmm.
Sick.
Because when I rode for Becker, it was tough to get boards. I didn't have a lot of boards. I just kind of got like a couple. And then Chris, like when I worked out the deal with him, it was like, oh, here, order whatever you need. And I ordered like 8 boards, and he was like, yeah, no worries. So I like then all of a sudden had a fish, and I had a Nautilus and and like I went through this whole list of like the
that's
best.
so nice.
Dude, it just unlocked so much.
What a dream,
it was the most insane deal.
That's awesome.
Dude, this is crazy, but I worked at Becker
That's
10
what
years
Viejo
ago.
one.
That's where we crossed paths.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you had like a model
Yep.
board, didn't you?
That's hilarious.
What the heck? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
I forgot
so
about that.
I forgot that you worked there.
Yeah.
That's so fun. I used to get like back to school clothes there when I was a little
feel
kid.
like I had a JJ Wessels Becker board.
Maybe you did. I don't know. That was my first
maybe
sponsor.
not. I can't
that like
think.
mid-length longboard thing?
I think I don't think it was.
Is it a pintail?
It was a Becker, but I don't think it was your model.
Yeah.
But that was the first board I ever had.
That's so
ever.
funny.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, Phil was one of the best shapers ever, hands down. Like he made like the most friendly surfboard you could ever ride, and that was what he was passionate about. Was like, I want to make user-friendly boards.
That's cool.
And a lot of people kind of would knock on that, but like honestly, like he knew his lane.
Yeah.
And he was the machine of his era. So he made 12 boards a day. I mean, the
Easy
guy was
eggs.
like, it was just
Gnarly.
easy eggs. Yeah. It was. And
Are they still
hanging-
going?
No, Phil's passed. He's gone. But
There's one Becker location still, right?
yeah, there's Malibu. I know for sure.
Okay.
Still a Becker. Yeah, I don't know if there's Hermosa. I think Hermosa and Malibu are the two, but they're owned by Billabong. So it's a board
That's
riders.
so random.
Yeah.
That is so random.
Yeah, that's right. When I was working there, they were
They
basically
sold-
like changing the store over to look more like Quicksilver, Volcom, Billabong.
I
Man.
can't imagine.
They own everything.
Imagine us.
They
being
own
like,
everything.
We're gonna buy that store.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be the same thing. But
Oh, you won't buy our clothes? We'll just buy you then.
And
How
then
about that?
it changed Becker completely.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Well, do you remember Brian Bent? Do you know him?
Yeah.
Okay, so Brian and I was like Brian's apprentice, like, and I just always looked up to his art and like worked with him, and he was their like kind of merchandiser. You know, he'd like build out a wall like this, like that's
sick.
That was his jam, and he just did a really good job at what he did. He went to every store that had 6 shops. He'd go one day a week. He'd go to every store. But Mission Viejo, he had the shop in the back of the shop. He had his little studio, and so I'd go in there all the time and like hang with him. And when they sold, like Brian was like, I'm not really keen on working with Billabong. They wanted him to like scan his fingerprint, clock in. That was just never
Scan his fingerprint?
Well, to clock in and clock out, you had to like put your fingerprint in. Brian was
What?
like, dude, I'm not. That's not.
That's we
not
might
me.
we might
I
start
missed
doing
that part of it, I think.
You didn't get caught up in that. It was
Yeah.
probably good.
That's so
But-
weird.
But Brian was like, Brian was in this spot where he would go to each store. He'd show up at like after he surfed, and he would just work till the shop closed one day, and the next day he'd show up early. And the waves were bad. He was kind of like, he was on his own, creative page. And so when that changed, he kind of left. But it was funny because when they started changing the store, they kept a lot of his art. So they would build out this way overbuilt wall, and then they would use like paintings he did to like kind of like keep it nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so when Becker closed in Mission Viejo, I ended up
Getting all
going over there, and I took apart the entire store, and like I took a wall just like this.
You just walked in with like a
I just
fucking crowbar and like
dude, I just
kicking
started
the
pulling.
shit. Everyone's like, call the cops.
Well, so it's funny, but the resin prints that I've been doing, like I've been doing these resin prints where it's like 10 layers of fiberglass, and then I print, a photo of mine on it, and it started because of that shop. Like in the front window, I don't know if you remember, the Mission store had this really tall wall, and they like stacked all this fiberglass, and it was like they were going to throw everything away. So I took like 10 of the panels. I wish I would have took it all, because then I could have printed way more. But that was what I was like, oh, I'm going to print a photo on here. And that's what like started the whole idea, was like taking apart that Becker shop when they closed. And there was just so much stuff that they were just getting rid of. Billabong was just like, we need to close the store, just get rid of everything. And they kind of told me like, hey, if you want that rack, because I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have that clothing rack. And they're like, well, then you got to take this one too. So I ended up with like so much
of
crap.
shit.
A bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah.
But it was like, my wife was like, dude, you just
have
brought
no room.
home stacks of metal.
That's sick, though. I mean,
So,
would you just sell it or something?
I still have it in my basement.
That's
Seriously,
sick.
still sitting down there. But I use it from time to time. Like I built a hot rod,
That's cool.
and I use that for the floorboards and kind of some of the cowl. And we built seats out of it, and like just it's just scrap metal, but basically like it was interesting the way they built their racks. They had these like little kind of slits in them, and so you could like change the rack height.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that.
Yeah. So it was like they were really gnarly industrial metal. So I just kind of I don't know, used it for a bunch of different little things. But like from time to time, I've even used them for like the Reedy Market thing I did. Like I used those the metal just for like my little fake awning I built. So I didn't want to use an easy up, so I just used super heavy metal. It was a good idea.
Where could we see your art? I'm curious about the resin.
Oh,
is it like
I
we go on
just
the website?
posted something on my Instagram.
We can go on there.
You can go on my website.
Yeah,
It's just JJ Wessels. My website's
.org.
No, .org. Yeah, it's
.net.
let me see. It's JJ and Nat. Yeah, JJandNatalie.com.
So you're just kind of into anything
Please.
creative, like
yeah.
art related, and
Yeah. So just put JJ and Natalie.
Taking a quick break from today's podcast to thank our sponsor, Ranch Rider Spirits. We've actually been friends with Ranch Rider Spirits for quite a while now. I don't know if you remember that can that we co-branded with them in 2020.
Oh, yes, the jalapeno one.
Jalapeno ranch water.
Yeah, the ranch water.
Yeah, a little bit of jalapeno cake on it.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which one are you drinking right now?
I'm actually drinking the Chilton.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's got vodka, sparkling water, sea salt, and there's 0 grams of sugar added to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds damn good.
It is damn good, and there's no bullshit in here, let me tell you.
Did you know they were actually the first one to can a ranch water?
Oh, really?
Yeah. First company to
It
do
wasn't Hidden Valley?
No.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. At least in the spirit form.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to look for them in your local pickup spot, go ahead and look. If not, go to their website, and you can search up all their retailer locations. Click on one button, boom, in your hand.
But I'm not talking about dressing.
No, we're talking about Ranch Rider Spirits.
There you go.
Oh wow! All right, we're in.
And then
Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
It
crazy
doesn't
looking
even
camera.
look like you, but I guess you're covered up.
Yeah, that was.
That's sick.
Do you shoot a lot of film?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we started kind of. That was like I got an AE1 from my uncle, and I started shooting with that. And then, if you
That was my
go,
first camera,
go up to the very top, and then click shop, and I think there might still be on there.
We asked Brian to be on the podcast too, and
Yeah.
I think he's coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
God, load more maybe. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. There's
Wait, so you sell all this stuff?
well, they're out of stock.
Okay.
Because I did a show in
That's sick.
That's really sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
thanks.
I like that. Wow, I like all of it.
Yeah, that's dope. When you make more, we'll
frame's
snag
cool.
one. We'll buy one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'd be
Wait, so
cool.
how'd you do that? That's not a tin type, is it?
No, it's actually it's 10 layers of glass, and then it's printed directly onto the fiberglass,
Wow.
Cool.
which
Wow.
looks really cool in the light. Like
I was gonna say.
I
that must
posted
be-
one on my Instagram like yesterday, but
Can you like light it from behind? Like, what
Yeah.
would that do?
yeah,
Sounds
so
sick.
I built actually. So this was the start of it, and then now I built kind of some light boxes. So like the photo
That's cool.
kind of sits over the box, and then I just did battery powered light boxes. But yeah, I've just been kind of messing with photography. So I've always felt like the photography thing's been a bit of like, kind of like the start to like the creative process for me. It's not really necessarily like, I don't consider myself like a photographer. I think it's just shoot the photo, and then like where it goes from there is
These are
like
sick.
kind of the median that like for me like changes all the time. Because like yearly I'll do like
That's dope.
So
thanks.
sick.
Yeah, I'll do some stuff like we do like a zine for the wetsuit brand I read for called Blacklist, and so we'll print like every year one basically kind of a little catalog, but it's like, you know, kind of a small zine. And it's cool to like print some of these photos and then tear them up and then like rescan them and kind of like get more artsy with the way that the print looks.
I like the color touch.
So
of
rad.
The stringer one.
Yeah.
Red.
Yeah, the red.
That's dope.
Yeah, that was Chris's mark that he was doing for a
Ooh,
while.
that's dope.
He was just doing
Oh,
that.
really? Just like a red streak on the string?
Yeah, and he wouldn't even sign the boards.
Whoa,
So
that's cool.
Yeah,
I can't even tell you how many times I've looked at his website, just like
I know.
wanting a board.
Remember we almost went in on one, like we split it?
Yeah.
That would have been so
I
weird.
should
Like,
introduce you guys. It would be
Would love that.
He would
yeah, that'd be
awesome.
sick.
So I'm sure.
Look at that.
So what are all the brands that you're surfing for or shooting for? Both.
You can scroll down on the sorry, go back one page to like the main page, home, and then scroll to the bottom, and like that's pretty much the client list currently. I mean, not PF Flyers, not so much anymore.
Damn.
Kalo, not so much anymore either.
Beach.
Which ones are like surfing versus photo? Or are they all both?
No, actually, yeah. Surfing's Captain Finn. That that was kind of like the primary surfing sponsor up until like. I don't know, I want to say like last year, maybe a year and a half ago, just before COVID.
Okay.
Like, so that was just like primary surfing stuff. And then Uppercut's kind of like been the secondary brand that's always supported me forever. They're great. And then, I was doing stuff with Electric. Now I'm doing stuff with Rain. The Electric thing was just kind of knowing Crane and being friends with Eric and been working with some of the guys. There's a guy, Kevin Voglin, that shot a bunch of stuff for them. And so I just he'd hired me to come on and shoot. And then they gave me products, so it wasn't really like a sponsorship per se.
So you worked at Electric in the early days with Eric?
No, I didn't work there. One of my
Okay.
best friends did, but no, I didn't work with Eric. I did one shoot with them,
Gotcha.
specifically, and then Scotty Stopnick rides for them, and so I was kind of on the, hey, yeah, we want to get you plugged in, but just never really, the timing was just never really right. So
How'd you meet Eric?
I met Crane when he was at OP, that
Way
was
back when.
way back in the day, yeah. And I just kind of admired. I don't know if you've ever seen his art, but he's a really good artist.
Did
Eric?
not know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He showed us a little bit. Didn't he come with
Yeah.
the logo? Or
Yeah, I did
he
a
came
lot.
up with the
He
electric.
didn't really show
Yeah.
us a lot of his art, though.
I know he
we
didn't.
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, you should pick his brain because he's done a lot of logo work. I mean, when he worked at Nixon, he did a lot of design work, and OP. He was a big part of kind of the was it 5.2 or whatever when
Yeah.
OP had that brand. Do you remember that sub brand? It was
I don't think I remember that.
OP launched this thing called 5.2 or 53 or something. I don't know, something like that, and it was like a kind of sub brand. And at the time, it was very kind of photo driven and kind of very. It was just different than what OP was doing. OP was kind of trying to be a throwback in a way, and they started that thing, and Crane was a big part of that, and so that was cool to see. And then he was part of this brand called American that was in San Juan that he had partnered with, and so kind of followed his thing just because he's a really talented dude.
It's crazy because he's so business focused now because he's been through the ringer and the whole industry. So I feel like now he's just business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he even does that much art anymore. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We did this. So there's this group of guys that did this thing called Wheels and Waves, and it was surf motorcycles, right up my alley. And they did it in basically the Basque Country, south of France.
I saw that when it was happening. It looked epic.
It was insane. And so those guys came over here, and they're like, hey, we want to do one here, but just private invite only. So they rented out this ranch up in kind of borderline Big Sur, and it was in
San Simeon? On the south
so
end?
close to San Simeon. Really, actually, we stayed in Cayucas, but it was probably 15 minutes from Cayucas. So before San Simeon, right in that zone. And they rented this barn, and they had Mattson 2 play, a bunch of bands. It was killer. But there was only 150 people invited, and so Crane Electric was kind of invited, and so he went up, and they rented a place.
Damn.
And I remember sitting next to him, and he had this sunglass rendering that he was working on, and I was like, dude, did you draw that? And he's like, yeah. And he was literally drawing
Damn.
sunglasses.
Just pen and paper kind of
Yeah,
style?
it was insane. And I was just like,
Wow.
oh, I had no idea that was what, but that's his background. I think he started Arnett. I
Yeah.
don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
He's probably got a full story.
We did. When we had him on. We can probably go back. I should remember. But
Yeah.
I think he, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. He told
But
us
anyways, great guy, and he's done a lot of cool stuff. So, and I think from the sense of, just I think that creative lens, it always kind of comes back to me where I'm like, wow, there's so many people are so talented, there's a lot of great surfers that are great artists, and then there's a lot of surfers that aren't great surfers, but are really, really good shaper. There's just like everyone has talents, right?
Everyone's contributing,
right, in some way. Yeah, exactly. So that's like kind of where it comes back to for me. It's like, wow, okay, cool. Like, just got to be a little bit more like perspective driven instead of like judgmental.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely the big problem, right? In the surf world, it's like it's like the biggest thing, right? When new people come in, that's their biggest thing they always bring up is that judgment, or just it's kind of like a big barrier to entry. Yeah, it's cliquey, all that localism and stuff, which isn't just in surfing, but I feel like that's what it's kind of known for in a way. Maybe just around here, but
it's just so easy to be cliquey because you can pull up to a surf spot in your car with a couple people and just kind of vibe people out. And how would you even get away from that? It just has to be cliquey.
I know.
That's just that's the culture.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's all subjective in the sense of like, I actually kind of respect in some ways the fact that like you can't just like walk into something and all of a sudden just like inherit it.
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless of what you have. Like, it's funny. I was talking to the guys that did Cuckoo the Day, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but that got pulled from Instagram.
I saw
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
They're back up now.
Yeah, they're back up now.
Why? It's like offensive. I mean, it's like the whole thing's offensive.
Right. Yeah. But it's like, but they're like, hey, we're just making fun of people. Like, it's just a joke. Like, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
And I think
that's so gnarly.
My response was like, oh, is it because you made fun of Zuckerberg? You know, like,
what?
Like,
yeah, that's true. They probably thought about that, right, when they posted that?
I don't know. I mean,
that video was mental.
Probably a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
Making fun of the guy that like basically like owns the whole company that your platform makes money off of. But so they took that risk, and I respect them for it. And I think like that was part of it. And then the fact that they've made so much fun of the WSL for so long, like every time the WSL makes a mistake, they're on it. They're like, good. They're just ready to like throw blows. Yeah. And honestly, if you think about it, the WSL were to slow down and look at it from the perspective of like, hey, you know what? This is just as important for us to just have interaction. Yeah. And let's just like play the game and just like enjoy the joke. Like, yeah, we made a mistake. We accidentally, said congratulations, John Florence, and when it was Jack whatever, whoever won. And those things like come up, and like rather than them playing along, they just like, you hurt my feelings. You're bullying me. Whatever. So I imagine that's probably why Cuckoo the Day got pulled. And so
surprisingly corporate. It is crazy.
What is
WSL?
Well, everyone wants to be a surf brand, right? So all this money's coming in. Like you're saying with Igloo, like we want to get in surf. It's like these people are like willing to ball out, and so they're like, all right, come on in, we'll play by your rules.
I know. They just But
then when you watch the WSL,
at the same time, it's like just they're not reading the room. They're not.
Who owns the WSL? Is it another company?
No. Well, it's like I want to say like a hedge funder guy from
New York
Dirk
or something.
Zifferberg or something.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Dirk something rather. I think what I've heard is his wife's a huge fan of surfing, and so that's why.
Oh wow, he bought
the sport.
That's psycho.
Ridiculous.
Bought the
Every war has always been fun. By the way, I'm just kidding. That's so wild.
Like, even just like. What's his name? Eli?
You might
the
snag me
CEO.
one.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
the Paloma.
I don't know him. I don't think I've ever like.
I'm going in.
I'm not trying to talk shit on him per se. Like,
do it.
But it is just so crazy how it is just corporate. Like they don't even, like I said earlier, they're not reading the room. Like surfers,
I know.
It's always been a counterculture, just like and then they just like bring in this like athletic weird vibe to it that's like so pertained to sponsors and making sure it looks so good for CBS and all this shit. And it's like, that's just not.
It's brought a lot of money in, I'd imagine, for the athletes, but for like a select crew of athletes.
And we all still watch it. And
you mean
we
like
also
16
like it.
guys?
Yeah, that's it.
In the entire world.
I know. I mean, it's also introduced surfing probably. I mean, I'm thinking way too positive of it because it's definitely. It's hard to look at that and be like, damn, that's cool. It's like feels so commercial.
It only helps the corporate brands though, because like we're a surf brand. I don't think the WSL helps us at all because we are still on the counterculture. So,
yeah, it's true. I don't think we're like a performance.
Yeah, so I feel like it's just a weird world. The WSL.
It is wild, right? I know.
Yeah, I think you just have to like kind of look at it for what it is, and and
the surfing's great on it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the value of it. They're creating a spectator sport, And I would say, like, you know, a brand like Seager is probably more on the engaged side of, hey, like, come participate and do the things that we're doing. And
for sure.
Right? You're trying to inspire people to go out and, like, live a life that's, like, not sitting on your phone, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know the
That was
story,
the
but
100%.
you know what I mean? And so I think that's the difficult part of it, is, like, traversing that. It's just like the wave pool scene. Like, I got the opportunity to go to Kelly's pool, like, early on, and it was amazing. Got to surf
longboard
it. I did longboard it. Not a great longboard wave. I mostly rode a smaller board, and it was, dude, it was like the best experience ever. But I realized, okay, like, this is designed to watch, like, literally, like, the contest, the whole thing. It's a little bit mundane, right? Pretty boring to watch those contests where it's just the wave pool, same wave every time. But, like, it was designed kind of like in this idea of, like, hey, we're gonna make a perfect wave, and we're gonna create this canvas that people are like just driven towards. And then you have the opposite, where you go to, like, a Waco. I don't know if you guys have been to Waco.
Yeah, we did.
Waco is, like, the funnest place ever. The wave isn't like nearly as good as Kelly's wave, but it's very engaged in just, hey, everyone, like, come surf, ride what you want,
for sure.
And it's very, like, I think it's more of a participant. You know, like, you participate in that. Like, it's kind of boring to watch Waco, honestly. Like, I've watched the airwave enough to where I'm like, I'm pretty bored of that. But to surf the airwave was, like, sick. I'm like, dude, that was so fun.
It's fun.
So that's kind of the difference. And same thing with Kelly's wave. It's really fun to ride the wave, but it's only one wave every 6 minutes. So there's 10 waves an hour.
Yeah, it takes that
pretty
long.
slow. Yeah, it's a slow pace. And so I think, like, being able to, like, look at both from that perspective and go, well, hey, there's good things on this side, good things on that side. And maybe one day I'll grow out of, like, wanting to be engaged and go surf, and maybe I'll like to watch it. And there are those guys, like, graduating to the couch and, like, enjoying that part of, like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm on this fantasy surf league, and I'm super stoked on the fact that Griffin Colapinto won the contest today.
Yeah, you got 2X on him. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
You know, like, pound it out. That's fine. But, like, I'd much rather just go surf than even know.
Yeah,
you know?
for
So,
sure.
Like, that's the kind of, like, that's just where I'm at. And, like, I think most surfers are there. And that's the problem with the WSL. I don't think they realize that, like, they just got more people, like, stoked on just surfing and been like, hey, guys, like,
That's true.
let's just, like, promote whatever. Like, let's run the longboard events. Let's run, like, just a broad perspective of, like, because it's the only sport, if you call it a sport, the only thing you can do your whole life. One of the only things. There's guys at San Onofre, like, 80 years old, paddling out every day.
know.
Sure.
Crane was just telling me about
Same
his
dudes.
mom. Have you ever met his
What?
mom?
No.
His mom is a competitive surfer, and she's like 75 or something, and she lives in Hawaii now. And I'm like, is she still charging? He's like, no, but she still longboards, and that's the same with my dad and same with everything else. You know, you're like,
There's that surfing and golf comparison again.
yeah. So there is, going back to the WSL, there's that whole Joel Tudor fight trying to get back or get more, like, eyes on the longboarding thing. How do you feel about that?
That's a good question. You know, honestly, I don't know. It's a hard thing for me because I've never been a competitive person individually. Like, never been driven like Joel Tudor is as he's so competitive that he's, like, constantly competing no matter what he's doing. And I think that's made him great at what he does. But you know, I think as far as, like, from the lens of, like, you know, I don't know if that it deserves the merit it has. You know, like, the fact that, like, Joel Tudor's won multiple world titles is, like, amazing. But at the same time, like, that doesn't change my life as a surfer or most surfers' lives, or people, like, they just respect him and they think that, like, he's the best. And so it's all a perspective, I guess. Like, my perspective or allure towards world championships is definitely, you know, probably tainted in the sense of, like, I don't have this affinity to be that person or to even see, like, where, like, those accolades come into play, because
Just creates drive, I feel like, you know, like, if there wasn't a title opportunity, like, would he have even tried? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it creates that, like, I got to be the best. Like, some people are just born with that. Something to prove, maybe.
Right. And I think that's, like, important, I think, in society, but I feel like in a lot of ways, like, surfing is something I just enjoy so much that like, it's hard for me to, like, really, like, bow down to the fact that that's important. I just don't know. I don't know that
it's like really a way to get away. So it's weird when you think of people going to that as, like, their job, I guess, which is kind of your job too, in a weird way, but it's a very different way of it, you know. But it is also your job.
Totally.
I was gonna ask, like, without the competitive side to you, how do you think you made your name in the surf industry? Unless you did do competitive stuff too.
I mean, I just did the duct tapes. Actually, Joel invited me to the first couple of duct tapes and
3 world titles.
3 world titles later. No, honestly, like it's funny. I tried just like in surfing in general, and I got into it. I think I tried out for the surf team. St. Clement didn't make it. Like, got into art and was like, oh, this is my path. And like at first was bummed that like I wasn't good enough to make the surf team. Thought that was like important.
Longboard or shortboard?
I can't remember. I think I did both.
Okay.
I tried out for both, but didn't make either.
Yeah.
You know, and was just like, oh, okay, like that's not what I'm supposed to do. Got into art and then like got out of school and then opportunity sponsorships started to open up as a surfer. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna take that opportunity and go this way and
Without doing competition.
Without doing competition, just like Becker, like, hey, cool, like we'd love to make you a board. Let's make you a model. We'll give you a royalty.
Just from people watching you surf.
Just from like people watching me surf and relationships. And I started realizing like, oh, okay, cool, maybe that's an opportunity. But then when I started working for Becker, I was like, hey, you know, like I'd like to have my own touch on the models. Like, is there a way I could, you know, do the colors or like figure out, you know, kind of. So I started doing fabric inlays. That was like the thing at Becker. I did like the first 50 boards all had fabric inlays with like my art on all the boards. So like I dyed the fabric, burned the fabric, did like all these different things. I took letter press and like block printed the fabrics. And so all those boards came out and I'm like, dude, this is cool. It's like 50 boards in this series. And like that really had nothing to do with my ability as a surfer. It had more to do with kind of like the art side of who I was. And so I'm like, look back, I'm like, oh, that was really cool that I didn't make the team. And so I feel like sometimes in failures, you know, like even not doing good in the duct tapes, like did it pretty good and I never made a final. Yeah. And so I felt like, wow, okay, maybe this isn't for me. And so honestly, like it was kind of nice to turn off the idea of like, I'm going to go try to be in the duct tape and turn on the idea of like, I'm going to go try and like explore and surf places that people haven't surfed. Right. And so that's like what started bringing me up to Canada and started bringing me like off the beaten path. And so like, I felt like, you know, that's been the path for me is like when, not that I can't like handle like difficulty, because it's like, yeah, it's still hard to go and do things outside the box. Yeah. But like the contest thing kind of felt like it was, I don't know, there was more of like the aspect of like kind of you have to be persistent in that. Yeah. And that's not something that I've ever really pursued as a surfer.
Seems like you're good at accepting change. You're just like, oh, I didn't make it. All right, I'm gonna just do that. When some people would just like cry over it, just keep going, keep plugging away, and then it's like once that's done, maybe they make it, maybe they don't, and then once that's done, they're just like, I have nothing to show for it because I just spent all my energy fighting this one battle because they wanted to prove that they could do it or something.
Yeah, Nate Yeoman shared this story with me like a long time ago, but he was saying that there was a guy that was trying to do the QS with him, and Nate had like sponsors paying for all the trips, and he told me it's $50,000 to do the qualifying series, like as a shortboarder. That's what it cost to travel the whole world.
Who gets that money? Like, that's like the cost of travel.
That's what it costs to travel to get there to do the event. $50,000. That's like the minimum, right? He said there was like one guy specifically that ran it all on a credit card. They called him. That was
a nightmare.
They called the nickname like Credit Steve or something like that. And every event, he just wanted to be there because he wanted to qualify, but he didn't have the sponsors to do it.
Oh my god!
That was his passion. That was his drive. And
He's still
like,
in debt.
It's so crazy.
I know.
I was like, whoa, how could you?
That's a big credit limit
His
too, man.
Kelly Slater.
Yeah. He had to sell his hair, dude.
Right.
Pay off that debt.
Totally. And so it's like, I don't know. I've looked at that. I'm like, man, I just don't want to be the guy putting a square peg in a round hole. You know, like
no one wants to be that guy.
That could have turned into a really, really like inspiring story if it was some guy that like actually was.
I know.
It was Nick Fanning.
I know.
Instead, it's just a shitty thing.
It's just that guy's still in debt. It's
But
really
honestly,
sad.
$50,000 to go travel the world with a bunch
GoFundMe.
of cool guys and surf cool contests and really good waves.
Yeah, it's better than college debt, right? It's like that was his college debt. You know what I mean?
Right. I
and
totally
you get bankrupt on that shit. You know what I mean?
That's honestly such a good way of looking at it. That sounds.
That's his
fucking
college
fun.
debt. I know.
So I'm kind of down.
That's
for
what
that.
college should be, right? It's a trade school. Like, you want to just travel the world and
Yeah.
surf and party? He's like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Here's a credit card.
Good for that guy. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, and good for the
Applause to him.
banks, bro. They made money.
Yeah.
No, I back the dude. I just think that, like, you know, I mean, it's just, I think the allure of that, of like, oh, hey, like, I in order to be, like, you know, accomplished or make it, you have to do these things.
You need an accolade.
Like, you have to be a world champion in order to be a professional surfer. I'm like, well, that's not necessarily true. I think that some of the best surfers that I look up the most to, like, really don't have any ever, like, in history. You know, like
Yeah.
how many world titles has Mickey Dora won, or how many world titles did Lance Carson win, or like some of these guys back in their day, like professional surfing was like, it's kind of like longboarding, right? If you win, let's say you win the duct tape, how much money do you get? With $5,000?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, how does that actually?
Honestly, can't believe that.
It's
Is that really
super
it?
sad. I mean, I don't know what Vans
That
Sports.
seems-
It may have gotten more, and they're trying their best.
That's part of Joel's whole like thing is like
They need more.
pay the longboarders more because apparently like that's a huge market for like people buying stuff is the longboard community and the stylistic stuff.
Is it? I was thinking about that. I'm like, what brands are like? I know some brands. Obviously, I worked at Thalia, so that was very skewed into almost all that.
Yeah.
I was seeing a lot of that, but those were all brands like us, you know, small brands.
I feel like every surf shop that I could think of supports longboarding more than shortboarding.
Really?
Pertains to it for sure.
That I could think of right off the top of my head.
I mean,
yeah.
it's cool. It's like that's
Yeah.
the creative side. That's the people coming up with like cool new things.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's the shortboard side that sells to like more of the masses, I guess.
yeah, it's the Billabong, the Quick, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Because
You
it's
gotta understand
easier.
where we are. Like, if we were at Pipeline, like,
It would be all that, yeah, which
But
makes sense.
you go into a
Also-
surf shop there, it's different.
Yeah,
Also,
it's very different.
It's
True.
easier to enter that way. If you're selling longboards versus
Yeah.
shortboards, it's like, oh,
It's a
anybody
big-
can
Oh, it's
buy
only
this. Like,
$1,500.
yeah, but it's still easier.
Put the credit
for-
card on it.
for-
Easy.
I saw some stats, and I don't know how like real they are, but Joel probably posted them, and they're maybe skewed, but love
They're
you, Joel,
pretty
you're a good
amazing.
dude. Anyways,
All stats are on. All
He's
of
a
them.
good dude.
he was just saying, or I don't know where I saw this, but because of the market share, it's fully skewed that shortboarders get more money per contest.
Oh, like based on the market share that they have within the
Yeah.
surf industry, they don't get paid
and,
enough.
and that's also
That
the
would make sense.
That's also a women's argument too,
Yeah.
because
Within surfing?
Yeah, because
Oh,
surfing,
yeah.
surfing is a weird sport where women, well,
That's probably every sport, right?
women are really marketable, obviously.
In surfing,
In surfing.
probably especially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing about this equal pay thing, right? Like, so the women get paid as much as the men do, but then
Yeah.
Joel's whole thing was like, well, look, women's longboarding specifically has way more interest than women's shortboarding. And so he challenged the WSL to be like, look, there's more attention here.
Yeah, pay for the
There's-
attention.
Pay for the attention. There's way more marketing. You guys are marketing all this, but yet you're not paying for it.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, to me, from my end, I'm like, why is he even telling these people this? They're so, like, just let them.
It's like
just-
talking to a wall kind of thing.
Well, it's just they're so far outside of what
Yeah.
reality is. Like, they just want to own the sport,
Yeah.
and so they want people to watch the sport, and they want it to be a sport. They want to be on CBS.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's like, I think the better move, in my opinion, would have just been like, you know what, he should have never went back to the WSL in some ways.
Yeah.
But the fact that he won a third world title is amazing.
Yeah.
Super happy for
That's
him, and
crazy.
like, it's crazy. But I think, like, for me as a surfer, I've never been inspired to pursue that. And I thought that the duct tape, when it first came around, was inspiring.
Yeah,
I
that was
like,
sick.
there's really cool people in it. There's
Even the name, I was like, dude, that's it right there.
it
That's
was,
sick.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
really cool. And so there was a time where I thought, like, okay, this is going to be something different.
Right.
It's kind of become, you know, a bit of its own for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not too far off the path. Whereas, like,
Yeah.
if it was me creatively, I'd have been like, okay, this is longboarding. We're not going to judge wave to wave. We're going to change the structure of the format. Like, this is about everyone being here together.
Yeah.
Like, we need to kind of document this. Like, Vans,
More the energy than the score.
Vans doesn't really, you know, like, when I was on the trips, like, they would bring all these people, and it was amazing. Like, everyone that was there, especially early on, I'm like, man, there's like every film or photographer. There's so many great people on these trips, and like, it would just be really cool if like other people were able to see that, you know, like experience that, and,
Behind
like,
the
be a
scenes,
part of
kinda,
that, like.
yeah.
Probably kind of bit what you guys are doing, like, in
Yeah,
a lot
we're
of
trying to
ways,
even
like-
do more of that, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
we agree with that exact sentiment. It's like, there's so many stories where we're like, I mean, granted, some of them are like, probably can't film that, you know? What?
Yeah.
I was trying to do this slyly, so
Yeah.
I didn't interrupt
You
you.
say you
Stop
probably
me.
can't film that.
Oh, you pointed at the
I
camera.
pointed at the camera.
I thought you were pointing like at the camera.
Can
man.
I have a
was like-
ranch rider?
We can cut it.
I was like, what? You think that's me? No? Like,
Oh my God, this tasty juice in my mouth. Ranchrider.com.
.com.
Oh,
It might be spirits.com.
I honestly don't even like calling surfing a sport. I really think that
It is a weird
for
combo.
me personally, surfing is a way to
You're right.
kind of like get away from reality, you know?
What?
And I just
Ranch Rider
love
spirit.
being in the water and I love the sun. But then when you call it a sport, it just starts changing. the
What would you call
idea
it?
of
What would you call it?
like a leisure activity.
A leisure
Or, not a
activity.
leisure activity.
What do you do? I do a leisure activity.
Like, yeah, for me, I mean, we've
love
talked
that.
about this too. Like, the first 5 years I was surfing, I wasn't thinking about how to get better or how to do things.
Yeah, it's
I was
fun.
just going
Yeah,
surfing.
yeah.
I was just like, whoa,
I feel like most
And
people
then
are
as you
thinking
start
that.
getting a little bit better, you're like, oh, maybe I could do this. And you start thinking about it.
Maybe I could do a backflip.
But you know what I mean? Like, if people are starting surfing and
Thinking
you're
about it
just, you're just starting
It
just to
sucks.
go have fun.
That's when you have
You're
bad
not
sessions.
starting to get better as a sport.
I know.
Starting so you could just stand up and ride away.
I'm trying to, I'm
Feel
trying
the
to get
glide.
sponsored, bro.
Hey, we'll pick
I'm
you up.
still trying to get
We'll
sponsored.
pick you up. You've been in one of our videos, man. Honestly,
We'll pick you up.
That's
We'll
just
pick you up.
it's an interesting take on it, I think, because at the end of the day, like I think people really start to surf because it's a way to just get away
Yeah.
and like be out in the water, right? That's
yeah,
why
gets you
start.
outdoors, right?
You don't start surfing to be pro unless your dad was pro.
In the movies, bro. I remember like, oh no, not Johnny. It's the reverse of Johnny Tsunami. But isn't there another one like, what's that Arizona maybe? What's that one? What's
North
that?
Shore.
North
You're thinking
Shore.
North Shore.
Isn't that the same shit, right?
Started in a wave pool, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Arizona.
But it says Arizona, but it's really Palm Springs, which is funny.
Oh,
'cause-
what?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It was
shit.
the one that Kalani bought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's that pool.
Kalani
They
bought
started
that?
Well, yeah,
In
Kalani
Arizona?
Bob and no, it's
Bought
in,
it?
It's in Palm Springs.
But they
yeah.
resold it, right?
What?
No, they own it. It's going to be Palm Springs Surf Club.
No, I know.
You
but I
said there
think
was
they
like 4
recently
out
sold
there
it.
or something.
Oh, recently?
Yeah.
You might know more than me. I don't know.
He does insider trading, so if you want to buy some stocks, that's the guy.
Yeah.
I got that shirt.
My girlfriend was actually an interior designer. She was working on that project, and then she told me that they got bought by someone else, and they're redoing the whole thing completely.
This is all public information.
Got it.
It's gonna be pretty.
I find it interesting.
Allegedly.
Does
yeah.
anybody disagree with that? By the way?
What? The leisure activity?
About no.
I
About
want to
the
hear
sport.
2 other leisure activities.
No, I totally agree. But I think the 4 of us are in a room, like, kind of bullying on, like, the guy
Yeah.
who's won the world title.
I know. I mean,
Which
that's
is awesome.
athleticism.
That's awesome, too.
It's so
Yeah.
gnarly.
Yeah, I mean, you got to respect the fact that, like, you know, like when I don't know Griffin's home, he's working out, and not, you know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting
controlling
jacked.
himself, and
For sure.
and he's you know he's
Yeah.
he's focused on what his skills are in order. And they're making real money, so it's like it kind of makes sense in some ways, because maybe in 10 years when Griffin's got like his world titles or whatever, or I'm using him as an example, but anyone here in San Clemente, like those guys have all been able to buy houses and do things. You know, take
Yeah.
Kolohe, for
Yeah.
example, like he owns an apartment complex, like. I mean, all off of like being sponsored by Target because he was a competitive surfer.
Yeah, that's random
Like-
to me. The Target thing. I was like, what the fuck? You just like walk in, you just grab shit and walk out, you know?
No,
Yeah.
it's paychecks.
Yeah, but like what's crazy is he rode for Hurley,
Gift
but
cards.
he rode for Target. I'm like, do they sell Hurley at Target, or like
They
how does that
must.
work?
probably do.
They sell it at Boot Barn, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
They do.
That's a
But it's an interesting
I think they
thing.
do.
Like those guys figured out kind of the
Yeah.
their own. That's their path.
I mean, I love it. I'm all for it for sure. I just feel like there just is a separation from the roots, you know, of what surfing is. And so it's hard to get caught up in like, well, it's just not what it is, you know?
Right.
But it's like, that's just its own thing at this point. Especially, I picture the future there being like a coliseum. People walk in, there's just a fucking wave pool in it.
Probably.
People are going
Pretty
nuts.
sick,
Like,
yeah.
no, like an actual coliseum.
Well, yeah.
Probably.
I'm going to invest in this.
Yeah,
a good idea.
I mean, that's the way
Arena.
it's going, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be pro surfing either. I'm
Fireworks.
just saying for me personally,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about surfing, because
For sure.
I'm not looking to be pro, and I'm not going surfing.
I mean, there's
to get
16
better.
guys
I'm going
we're talking
surfing
about.
because it makes me happy.
Well, in my
Yeah.
perspective, which is a weird one, because I grew up with a dad that was trying to make me
Hard on you.
go.
He was hard on
yeah,
you. It's okay. You can cry, dude. It's all right, man.
My dad was a competitive surfer, and he tried to make that on me. And all my friends are competitive surfers, and 9 out of 10 of our surfers on the Seager surf team are competitive surfers, and they're all great dudes, blue collar, firemen, whatever. The way that I see it is that the better you surf, the more doors open up for you.
yeah,
So in that case, it doesn't really matter if you're pro or if you become pro or whatever. If you're a good surfer, 1,
Yeah.
the chicks follow. 2, you get sponsors, you get free shit.
Yeah.
3, you have fun because surfing
Yeah.
is more fun when you're better. It's just like that was kind of like
The
surfing
drive,
is more
yeah.
fun than you're better. I fully agree with that.
yeah.
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 But like it's I think the subjective thing is like what makes you better. Like is it going
That's true.
surfing, or is it like taking care of yourself and doing what those guys? I mean,
think it's
because
just
if
going
they're
surfing.
if you're at like a Kolohe level,
Yeah.
like you're probably better off jumping on a trampoline to learn to do a flip than
For sure.
than to go in the ocean
Foam
and
pits
learn
and
to do a
shit.
flip. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, but you'll see like the 350-pound dude that just rips on a longboard. And it's like, wow,
That's so
dude,
heavy.
Goes every day.
You've seen that before? 350
sure.
pounds?
I
You know
don't
how
know.
big that is?
I didn't
That's-
weigh him.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. I'm sure there's a man out there.
Absolutely.
One of my best
Yeah.
friends is a real big guy, and he ripped.
350 pounds?
He's close.
Really?
I would think he's.
There you go.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't,
Is there some videos?
Are they
I would
more,
love to see
Yeah.
are they
that.
more
His name's,
buoyant?
Again, he didn't weigh him.
Wait, I
No,
wanna see
actually,
the
yeah,
video.
because Fat Flips,
his name's
I think.
Gabe Wordley. Gabe Gabe.
Shout out Gabe.
Wordley WHRLEY.
Fuck yeah, Gabe.
He WHORLEY. Yeah, sorry.
Warley.
Yeah, Horley.
Horley.
Yeah, Horley.
Wow, that's
Yeah, this guy. I grew up surfing with him. There's a log wrap video of him.
Oh,
Maybe
fuck
just type
yeah.
in, like log wrap or something. There you go. Second guy
Oh,
down.
wow.
Second
Yeah,
guy, let's
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Oh, I
Oh.
might have seen that. I might have seen that.
Yeah, I've seen
Is
that.
that where you
Yeah.
got that from?
Probably.
Chase.
Me? No, I didn't get it.
Gamezilla.
But he's like top 1%.
Oh, fuck yeah. He's
Of 350-pound dudes.
But see, that's how I've always looked at this. Like, if you
That's
were to
sick.
judge, like, really judge, like, and analyze surfing, like,
Oh,
I think it should be weight classes, nothing to do with age.
Ooh,
weight class.
that's interesting.
Like, why is age factor into surfing? Like, if I
That
was
is so funny.
250, you know what I mean? I'm not like a small guy, but when I look at like when I was growing up, Alex Nose, for example, I mean, he was like 110 pounds maybe.
Yeah, that's
And,
just easier to get
stands
on the nose
all day long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then like you look at a guy
That's
this size,
true.
you're like, whoa.
That's a
like,
good point.
It's much more difficult.
Weight
I
class.
think.
Yeah,
there's a
you're
big
right. I mean, that's
challenge
challenging. Even his joints. Like, he's flexible
if
for
you're
how big
like
he is.
if you're like 6'6" or like
Yeah.
an NBA sized person, you
Look at
can't
him
get
go.
barreled. You're not gonna get in a
Can.
barrel.
Wow.
I
There's,
could barrel him
this isn't
6'5".
the video though. There's
Okay,
this lot.
that's-
It's like
What?
log wrap.
I'm
video.
talking about like a huge person.
No, I know, but
You just said 6'6" is 1 inch taller. than
Yes,
me.
but I was also thinking weight.
are you
as well.
6'5"?
Yeah, he's tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6'1".
Okay, yeah, we're all above
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
This is great.
I went to. It's funny. I went to Scorpion Bay, 2004 or something like that. Like literally the year I graduated, and I went with Gabe. We spent 2 weeks there, and you remember the basketball player Luke Longley? He was on like the Bulls dynasty. I don't know if you ever. followed
I'm
basketball.
not a basketball guy.
I'm
but
not a
he
huge
is.
basketball
He
guy
is.
either. But
I love basketball.
Do you know who that is?
Oh, sorry, who was it?
Luke Longley, you remember this guy? Anyways, he was on the team with like Rodman,
Okay.
Jordan,
Bulls.
like Bulls, Pippen. Like this
Fuck
guy
yeah.
was the center. He was the 7 foot tall center.
Oh my god.
But
And
he-
he surfs.
He showed up at Scorpion Bay
No.
and surfed, and like the dude was
No way.
no joke. I think he was up to the ceiling.
That's
he was
so
tall.
gnarly.
Rode a 13-foot board.
What?
Yeah, it was,
Or what about
That
Kyle,
looked tiny
Kyle
on him.
Albers? Or
Kyle Albert's a big guy. Yeah, he's got. I mean,
super
Justin
tall.
Adams.
Oh, what are we talking? Does he surf too?
Kyle, yeah, the
Yeah,
surfboard shaper. Yeah.
deepest reaches.
Deepest
Oh fuck yeah, he's tall as shit.
Super tall.
Yeah.
But he's also like flexible and lanky and stuff, you know?
Right.
Which is probably amazing.
Yeah.
He's like Jack Nightmare on that thing.
Yeah,
For sure.
That's probably amazing to surf.
Same surf.
Yeah.
It's like a daddy long leg.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't even imagine.
Those boards look so fun though. I'm not gonna lie. The Divas reaches the long ass mega fish thing.
Yeah. He's killing it. He's
Those are
got-
sick.
he's
Yeah,
got
he
some
is
good
killing it.
stuff. No, it's good, and I just think that's like part of it all, and you kind of have to sum it up and look at it and go look the competitive thing, go down the whole rabbit hole of like whether WSL is doing the right job or the wrong job or whatever. But like, it's fueled in some ways like different avenues of surfing. Like I look at a brand like Lost. I mean, when I was a kid, Lost was like just the most mayhem, destroy yourself brand there was. And now it's very like you look at like they're tamed, sophisticated, and I think like I respect it actually. Honestly, like I really respect the fact that like Matt's transformed the business into this like we make boards for the best surfers. Like I think it's really like it's really changed a lot. And not that I didn't like it before, but I feel like he's got the same artist. He works with Drew Bropey. It's their own thing. That's not my thing, but it's what I respect what he's done and what he does, and the team he has. It works, and like people like enjoy the boards. They seem like really good boards. I mean, some of the best short boards I think there are, and so like you just have to look at that as like, okay, well, you know, the WSL's influenced that because he sponsors Griffin, he sponsors Kolohe. I mean, 3/4 of the program are riding Lost boards, so it's like, wow, okay, that's the brand's changed because of that. And maybe just the same for us. Like if the WSL came to me and said, hey JJ, like we want you to like, you know, create a, you know, like commercial for us every 6 months and we'll pay you $20,000. I'd be like, well, I got to think about that. I really would think about it. But at the same time, like I would be in this place, I think creatively where I'd be like, oh, you know what? I can make this work.
Yeah.
right? I mean, just
Yeah, I can make it
Yeah, I
version.
can make a cool
sure.
thing out,
Yeah.
out of like something I don't think
For
is that
sure.
cool, like
Yeah.
better than a Jeep commercial where it's like whatever those Jeep commercials are, I ride
I
them.
love those.
I mean, they're
I
just
live for those ads,
and they're
honestly.
on so much. That's the hard thing about watching those.
It's the same
commercial.
2 ads.
Yeah.
It's just like, geez,
What is going on? I'm like, bro, you're getting plenty of money. Like, just get 2 different ads. I don't want to see the
Yeah.
same one every
Might
time.
as well. Yeah.
yeah.
What is that? What's going on?
So it's just a rabbit hole, but I think like
Yeah.
I really think like to kind of like sum up my perspective on longboarding and I think where I look at surfing in general, I'm just stoked for it all, but I think that there's a sense of like there's so much opportunity like for someone to step into this place where it's like more about stories and more about like just I don't know kind of telling like me talking about my plane crash that's real like
that's so gnarly.
and it's like a very real thing to me
Yeah.
and everyone has that
Yeah.
sense to them or that story to them and
I forgot
whether
about the plane crash.
Yeah, can you?
I
Can we?
wanna
I
go
don't, I
back
don't know
to
if we
that.
dove into that. Yeah, can you? How
Are
high?
you okay with diving into it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
It's a good
There's-
question.
there's
That's
a-
a bad word.
there's
to
a
say.
film. I
We
mean,
do
I did a
dive
film
into
with the Surfer's Journal. We did like a
Oh,
full,
about that.
a full film of like it was kind of like a mini doc, which was like 13 minutes. It was really cool.
That's cool.
And,
Yeah, that sounds great.
yeah, that was something that like it was challenging in talking like on the interview. You know,
Yeah.
like because it was like a few days and we filmed a lot of different stuff and like to kind of then actually have there's the actual footage of the crash because it was on
No
video.
What?
way.
What?
So
Why was it on video?
Oh my god.
well, because we were making a promotional
Oh.
piece for the
Oh my
the pilot.
god! Do you mind if we search for that?
Yeah, you can look at it.
I would-
Yeah,
I mean, just
it's
for-
called Of Salt and Dust.
Oh my god, that is so gnarly.
How
and,
did the
Kevin Vaughn made
plane
it.
end up going down?
We don't know exactly.
Wow.
So it's
it
in
was,
there.
it was
Black
like
box?
we crashed on takeoff.
Oh,
and
wow.
So the pilot
Oh,
believed it was mechanical and they determined that it was kind of more likely pilot error.
Wow.
So it's just like kind of one of those things. It's subjective and like I don't know. I'm not an expert, so
Yeah.
Excuse us for skipping through.
No, please
Yeah,
do.
we'll go back and watch it.
No,
Yeah,
no,
we'll
you
actually
can watch
watch
this
it.
on
I
your
just-
own.
I'm going to, but yeah, I want to see the plane.
Yeah.
Where is it? It's let's see here.
it's a sick
Keep going right
trail.
there.
Look at
I
that.
saw the ambulance. Okay, so right here's where
This is it.
So that's my
Oh, yeah.
wife there, and then
Oh my
boom, that's
god.
the ground,
Oh
and
my
then-
god.
And then there's we cut out the audio,
Did you just
which-
black out? Like how gnarly?
Yeah, I was knocked out. We were all
Damn. Oh my
knocked
God.
unconscious, and then
Fuck.
yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah, it was
It's a blessing that you guys lived.
I
to-
know.
good, fully. Yeah, and I
Damn.
think like that's been so rad to be able to share my testimony.
Oh my god, dude, you look beat up. That's so gnarly.
Wow.
Wow, that's heavy. That must be weird watching that.
It
Sorry.
is a little strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like it's real, and I think like that's
Yeah.
part of
of
life that
story.
like I just when I talk to somebody like a Joel Tudor and I hear like the true part of Joel Tudor, I'm like, wow, I really appreciate
For sure.
that so much more than like the world title.
Yeah.
Like
For sure.
because I don't know that the world title is as real as it
As he is.
As he is,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's like the cool thing about being a friend of someone like that, or even like just other peers in surfing, where you're like, oh, cool, like everybody kind of goes through different trials, tribulations, and things,
Yeah.
and so like you look at certain guys that have been able to kind of like process that, and then like I don't know, there's more to their story, which is like really
know.
what I wish like more brands like the WSL would get behind. Like,
Yeah, telling those.
I mean, everyone wants to hear like the Rocky story of
I
like, how
know.
you like you kind of fought through it and came from from nothing or whatever. That's why I think some of the Brazilian dudes maybe have like the following they have because they've come from like really hard roots.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say too. Have you seen like the new docuseries by the WSL?
Make
No.
It's on. It's like
What's it
it's
called?
like the Formula
Make or
1
break.
Netflix one.
Oh, dude, that's
just like that.
Yeah, okay.
It's obviously commercialized.
They're made from
and
the same
they make
production
it.
company.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's obviously commercialized, and they make it a little bit extra of what you need to see, but you do actually get to hear a little bit of like personal stuff from them, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and I thought it was interesting.
Okay.
It made it more personal, like you said.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't as good as the F1.
I know.
Dude, the F1 that's like you watch one of those and you're like
That changed the world.
And you're like,
Yeah.
dude, this is insane.
I know.
It's really good.
Have you heard
Yeah.
that stat, Mattson? You want to throw it down? You want to say it?
I'm trying to think. Do you know it by heart?
No,
Okay,
I can
so it was-
lie and make one up, but
it was something like F1 is now like majority American fan base because of that
Wow.
show.
Like it changed their whole.
Changed the whole thing.
I
Yeah,
literally
because of that
like,
show,
want to go to a
which
race and
could-
watch.
Yeah,
I
a
didn't
lot of
even
people
know.
like you
Yeah.
and me.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it,
Yeah,
dude.
totally in that one.
I held out on that
You've
one.
never seen it?
I didn't watch
It's
it.
fucking
No.
good, dude.
Go watch
I know
it.
everyone loves it.
F1.
I did. I
Why
know. I
not?
grew up with F1. That's why I didn't watch it. I was like, I get it. I get it.
I get
I
it.
like.
I don't want to see that.
I didn't want to see it. I was like, I get it. These guys. It's like, it's. I mean, it's probably similar with the WSL. I'm like, dude, these guys are just like ultra elite. Like it's like cream of the crop. That doesn't get me as excited. Like you can just watch the
funny thing
race.
about
You know,
F1 is the way that they start. Like literally, the start.
it's called go kart. Is that what you're talking about?
Just go kart.
That's what I'm saying. My dad's
It's so funny.
Dude, my
They
dad's
show
been in-
like I worked my hardest to get you here, and then it's like they just show like
Yeah, I had a golf cart. Yeah, I had a go kart, dude. I know. I went to K1 every day,
Yeah.
dude. My dad was in the auto world his whole life, right? From his dad, and one of his friends in the auto industry. That guy's son, right? I think he's similar to my age. He was trying to go that route, and I remember we were growing up, and I would visit him, and he's like, "Oh, he just came back from a tournament," and I was like, "Oh, what do you do, man?" He's like, "A go kart race." And I was like, "What do you what?" And he was like,
That
"Show me
sounds
photos." He's
so
like, "Look at
fun.
this." He had like the full coveralls, you know, and he's just like in his cart going. I was like, "That's so funny." I was like, "That's like when someone tells me to play lacrosse." I'm like, "Dude, it's so foreign," you know. I'm like, I have no relation at all to that, you know. But I'm in thinking, I'm like, dude, you're like, it's such a small amount of people make it.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
tiny.
You know what I mean? It's like
Tiny
that's
amount.
so sad to go into a sport. That's why I like baseball. I'm like, bro, you could play like D3, you could still make it.
And I think it's funny too that a lot of the best F1 guys are good looking. It's like
Oh God, you really think they're all good looking, dude?
No, I'm just saying.
Come on.
I'm just saying. There's definitely a marketable side to it. I'm
Oh, for
sure
sure.
there's some like really good racers that are like, they're like ugly.
Ooh.
Like, I don't know. We'll take
Yeah, we'll
Hamilton
take
over
that
him.
guy. No way, dude. It's like
Have you
shaving
seen-
seconds, dude.
Have you seen Ford versus Ferrari?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Great
like,
movie.
that's a
Great
great movie.
movie.
But like, I think that era of like that stuff doesn't really exist anymore. You know, where like you've got a guy who
The
gets
all-American man.
recruited to make a car for a company that can compete with another company.
Yeah.
And like that aspect of like the creativeness of like, yeah, Shelby was a great racer and he had another racer race for him because he couldn't race anymore. All that story to it. It's like, that's the stuff I'm like, wow. I feel like now it's
Sick.
like, it's like very, it's kind of computer analytics, where you're like,
Oh, it's for sure.
you're like,
that.
okay, if we're going to do this, we need to put this in this program
Yeah.
to make sure that the wind is this and that.
Well, it's all electric too now. That's the
Right.
thing.
So
Do
it's
you know that
taken away.
DeLorean made a new car?
No way.
Yes. You want to look this up? I saw an ad for it and I was like, fuck yes. The DeLorean, right? DMC or whatever, motor company.
Okay.
They're saying, what's that model called? The one from Back to
there
the
it is
Future?
right there.
Is it just the DeLorean? They made an all electric car, and it's
That's a Tesla.
it's something I wouldn't. It's something I wouldn't buy. It's something I wouldn't buy. But I was like, fuck yeah,
That's
DeLorean's
cool.
back in
That's
the
a
game.
Tesla.
No, it's not. That's a DeLorean.
No, I
Look at
know.
the
I'm just saying it. That's
You gotta look at other photos.
It
Go
looks a little sleeker.
go on their website. They have go on their actual website. It's probably just like DeLorean.com or something. Yeah, click on that one.
DeLorean.com.
.com.
Wow.
Look at that
Oh,
shit.
It's the same.
It's like that's the future. It's like it probably just like 3D rendered that and they're like, I don't know, fucking make it.
It looks like a Corvette.
I would never
gonna
buy
say,
that.
yeah.
Honestly, they made
would you have
Corvette.
bought a regular DeLorean?
No, but I've always liked the rogueness of DeLorean. That guy was dope. That guy like changed the game. Did you ever watch that movie on him?
You wouldn't buy
Dude.
a regular DeLorean?
No,
The
that's
80s?
80s as fuck. I'm not gonna lie, I hate the 80s. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
gonna say it right now.
Maybe I'm thinking of it
Plastic. They just ruined the world. Fucking beep bop, shit ass music. Come on, get out of here, dude.
80s were cool.
Come on.
Pretty
Purple.
funny though
Everything
how
was
like
purple.
plastic took over,
Dude,
in the
killed the
80s.
world.
Like it was like, oh, get rid of glass. Glass cuts your feet. Da 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 da.
Fuck that.
And then like now all of a sudden it's like the story is let's get rid of plastic. Let's go back to
Yeah.
glass.
Yeah, I know.
So wild.
Like, make up your mind,
Yeah, the 80s were the ones that like
dude.
that
They went
generation was
gnarly.
really responsible for the
I know they
plastic.
had a lot of problems. man.
Everything became plastic.
Everything, yeah,
just
it was all
cyclical.
big corporate. That was the thing. It was like big corporate takeover of the world. It was the 80s.
Yeah.
Cars used to be so good, and then they
I know. I mean, the late 70s, it was like a slow wind down. They're like, it's too expensive. Honestly, wings. Like, just throw a fucking wing on a car. People want that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't even do
It's weird
ornaments
how, like,
anymore.
How the style of the 80s though, like even look at surfing, it's a good example of like the 80s was such a bizarre time. Like even for longboarding, I look at the 80s, I'm like, oh, like
Yeah, it's so
there's a
gnarly.
lot of guys that grew out of the 80s into the 90s, and they were like kind of still into that era of surfing.
Yeah.
And that was like that's the hard part for me to swallow or grasp is like Joel Tudor when he won his world titles, he's surfing against that that caliber of surfing.
For sure.
Really, like to me, the biggest accolade he ever had was to change the scope of what people like all of us now view as longboarding.
Yeah.
You see it totally differently, largely because of someone like him, you know? And so that's, to me, like his biggest accomplishment is to have been against the grain. And I think like it's the same thing with I think the culture of even like the WSL. Like it'd be great to see someone like a Bobby Martinez step away from it. I don't know if you ever watched his interviews, but they're classic. The dude's just like, I don't need this. This is a tennis. This is a bunch of crap.
Hilarious.
And he's so funny, but it's so true. And like you watch him surf, dude, he's still one of the best surfers there is. And like it's very like it's just cool. But he was able to figure out like, I'm gonna go to a monster or have like a corporate sponsor, and so he's found his own path. And so at the end of the day, like if he didn't have those accolades or didn't have that in his back pocket, he'd probably still be trying to compete on tour.
Yeah.
Because everybody's just trying to make a living, right?
I know.
That's the challenge of it. And like as you grow older, you start to realize like, oh, I've got mouths to feed. I've got a mortgage. I've got like these responsibilities. And so sometimes that becomes the governing thing. And I've learned to respect like people's paths because of that. Like, you know, and not that I've like necessarily like won every battle I've ever had, but I feel like I've been successful in my own sense. You know, just like I look at your guys' brand, and I think the success is the fact that the 3 or 4 or 5 or however many of you guys there are can all be in the same room and communicate and not kill each other. That's hard to do.
I know.
It's like it's kind of like a marriage. Brands are like, you guys are connected, you know, and so
it's gnarly. I'm married, and it's gnarlier than a marriage. That's for sure.
right.
It's like having like 15 wives, dude. Imagine that.
Like
everyone has
but we
their
don't
own.
get to fuck.
What was that?
Bickering, but we don't get to fuck.
There's not a lot of reward, I guess.
I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't fuck your wife?
Whoa.
God, dude. Yeah.
What did you do, JJ?
I just spun this whole thing. It was way off.
We can cut it.
Yeah, we'll cut that. Sorry, G.
It's all good. No,
For your records.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
We're not cutting this.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
No, I think that's the allure to what you guys are doing though. Like I think like for someone like me, like I look at it as like authentic, even though, you know, like you look at like a brand, other brands like a Rourke or something. Like when Rourke started, I remember I was like, oh, what's Rourke? And I looked up, I'm like, oh, it's about this fake person that they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, well, that doesn't seem very authentic. But then you start seeing like the brand be true to the people that are involved, the art, the direction. And it's like, wow, this is very creative.
Yeah.
Which that's to me what made that brand authentic, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that kids like that don't realize that or don't really like that's not important to them. They figure that out in other ways. Like it comes natural. And people that buy Seager probably see it as real, and that's why they're interested in it. I would assume, you know, like maybe it's also it's good product, whatever it is. There's other variables, but I think like when people want like what they want is something that's like something that they can resonate with. You know? They don't want something that's like out here, and I think that's the hard part. Is like sometimes surfing gets out of touch. You know, like as a surfer, I'm always like, oh man, it's like this much more can be like too much. You know, and that's really easy, especially when you get into the like stuff that's like for the general person they can't do.
Yeah, they work during the week in the morning, and
right?
Maybe one trip a year, you know.
Yeah.
So when you see like Chopu or something, you're just like, I'm never going there.
Exactly.
You're just watching that, you're like, that's sick. Okay.
Yeah. it's like the Jaws contest. Like if you were really at Jaws, you'd be like, this is insane.
Oh my god, I can't imagine.
But like watching it, you're kind of like, oh, okay. Like I that's how I feel about big wave stuff. Like.
It's so gnarly.
It's gnarly, but
how do you get into that? Just straight meth? Like, what is that? What's that trajectory, dude? That's so gnarly. Like, how do you paddle into that shit?
Yeah,
honestly,
a really
how do you
small
paddle
amygdala.
out? A small amygdala.
Small amygdala.
For no fear.
It's proven, actually.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a couple big wave stuff. Like I surfed Toto's pretty big, and I've surfed a few big days, and like I think that there's a whole world to that.
It's so gnarly. Yeah.
And if you're really into it, like the Billy Kempers of the world or something, like
that's
a totally different beast. Like surfing Jaws is just insane. But I look at what they do, and it's funny. Like I just keep it simple. I'm like, well, they're riding longboards, 9-foot board, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
They're longboarders. So like that's like to me surfing. It's just like riding everything.
Yeah.
And And if you live in Maui and that's like what you have like in your front door, that's probably.
So gnarly getting to surfing. Like, I don't know, I got an 80-foot wave. I might as well get into it. Just
But look at like
fucking
Bethany
paddling.
Hamilton did it with one arm.
I know,
Like,
that's so
pretty
fucking
gnarly, but
gnarly.
like
So
she's
insane.
gnarly.
I
like,
know,
you know,
she's
or, like,
so gnarly.
I just recently surfed the wave that she got her arm bit off at.
Oh, wow.
Whoa,
Yeah,
how was that?
pretty gnarly.
like literally last week in Hawaii.
How was that?
I don't know.
Did you have any?
I didn't even know until I got back.
Oh,
I
really?
was like, I'm gonna look up waves or like other like when that wave is good and stuff. And I was like, oh my god, that's the wave.
yeah.
yeah. Anyways, it's
Wow.
a tangent.
That is a
But
tangent.
I was gonna say earlier. You said this is way earlier.
Oh my god, dude! You just remembered it and bookmarked it
You
in
have
your
a small
head.
amygdala.
Yeah, you have a small amygdala, dude. Maybe we should get in a big wave.
Journal
Right.
notes.
Yeah. You said that you would chase a swell up to OB, right?
Yeah.
In San Francisco. I'm curious, as a longboarder, what do you look for in a swell? Like, you're not like looking for that big overhead barreling day, are you? Or what?
But yeah, for OB, I mean, yeah, I think Ocean Beach has always had that like kind of cold water Porto feel, you know. I
And you
think
longboard
like
that, or you?
no,
Okay.
I mean now that I kind of ride everything. I love getting barreled. Like the South Bay, I started surfing for Tyler Zekian after Becker, like for a short period of time, and there was kind of some relationship to the factory. The Becker factory was building boards still. The factory was still privately owned and the oldest surf factory in California. There's a lot of history. And so Tyler Zekian was shaping in El Segundo, and I was riding for Mattson. And so he got introduced to the brand and became an ambassador. He's a craftsman. And so he was shaping my boards. And so every time I could, I'd surf with him. He's a really, really good surfer. I don't know if you know who he is, but amazing guy. And anyways, I started hanging with him. And the South Bay gets really big sometimes, like proper 10, 15 feet. You
Yeah.
know, like it gets like heavy.
Mhm.
And like he'll surf like huge waves, and he's super into it. And so one swell, I drove up there, and it was like pretty big, and I paddled out with him. And I remember like he didn't wear a leash, and he jumped
That's
off the
so
jetty
gnarly.
and lost his board, and then it washed into the jetty, and then he cut his legs on the jetty. I mean, the dude was just like hammered from the session. And you know, I made it out because I had the leash, and I just ditched the board and keep paddling. And we both got out. There's 4 guys out, and it was just like howling offshore. Huge, you know, biggest surf I'd surfed in a long time. I think probably maybe almost ever. And it's primarily left. It's called Hammerland. It's this really gnarly wave. And yeah, we surf for like pretty much a full, 6 hours, just kind of trading off waves. And then I got that bug where I was like, man, I'm so into this. I was riding a 7.5, like kind of, you know, not a gun, but like a Rhino Chaser type rockered outboard. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm down for this. And then I started kind of like trying to find that. And I'd gone through seasons of that. Like I went to Porto a few times and surfed Porto. I went to Pasquales and surfed Pasquales. Like I've surfed kind of like big tubes and been into it. And that there's nothing like that. Like that, just the raw power of surf, and it's different than riding a longboard, but it's similar in the sense of it's just surfing, you know. So you kind of feel comfortable, especially as much as I've been in the water. I've always felt like, oh yeah, I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm gonna drown.
Right.
And I feel comfortable in that scene. And you know, kind of some of the crew I grew up with, like, you know, Tyler Warren and like those kinds of guys. Like Tyler surfs big waves a lot, like, and he's pretty into that. And there was this girl we used to surf Doheny with. Her name's Bianca, and she's like one of the main women that surfs Mavericks now.
Damn.
She's there. She moved to Ocean Beach and lives up there. And so, yeah, we've had. It's funny, but like I feel like because of growing up longboarding, you kind of have this feeling on your board that's different than you would a shortboard where you're planted. You're like okay with moving around and kind of being bounced around a little bit more. You understand that feeling. And so I think that's the similarity in the big wave scene. But in the tube sense of like chasing barrels, I love like 10-foot tubes. And the best part of that is like I'll travel with my wife, and she doesn't like to surf that, so she'll oftentimes love to shoot. So that was the coolest thing, was when I was riding for Maddox, I had a travel budget, and I was able to kind of use that like, you know, kind of however I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I started bringing my wife on trips because I was like, we were dating, I think maybe we were married, I can't remember, but I would be like, oh, just pay for her. She'd shoot the photos, I'd bring back the content, and I got to do a trip with my wife. And like, you could go places with her that you couldn't go with a crew. And so I'd bring her and be like, oh, we're going to go. Like we'd show up in Canada and like these super localized spots, and be like, oh, your wife's here and she's shooting photos? Cool. You know, like, yeah, cool. Like you're not here for like a editorial thing? And I'd be like, no. And then I'd kind of use it for editorial.
Yeah.
So it was like a little bit of both, but I was
Yeah.
able to balance that enough to where like, you know, I've kept a lot of those photos like off the grid, but then some of that stuff I've let out over time. And I feel like if you do it right, you're not like blowing it out, you know? And so that's like kind of the part of that where if you see a good swell and the waves are good, it's worth the drive just to kind of mine the content and then like keep that, because it's relevant for like, it's kind of like a really good photo, like a timeless image, like old Ron Stoner stuff or some of those old photographers, or even Chris Burkhardt, some of the stuff that he shot, like it's kind of timeless. Like it almost will be better down the road, in some ways, because you're like, wow, dude, like that's really cool that wasn't developed, or that was this, or you know, like those kinds of things. And so surfing with people like Tyler or shooting photos of those kinds of guys was always like something that kind of like led me down that path of wanting to chase good waves. And I think like that's one thing you can say is relative between both sides of surfing is good waves are good waves. You know, and I think like today I was surfing Doheny and one of the kids out there, Elijah Fox, I think he rides Rip Curl, and he was like doing lessons. He's like, dude, I wish I had my shortboard. He's like, there's some like wedgy lefts I could be doing airs on. I'm like, yeah, I was nose riding that left. Like it's the same wave, you know, it's just the size ratio. I mean, I look for smaller waves for sure, and I look for point breaks. And you know, like the guys that are all looking for slabs, like that's the majority of the world, right? In surfing, barrel slabs. But I've always looked for like, you know, the scorpion bays, the long like peeling rights or peeling lefts, or
For sure.
like, and my wife loves that. But I like to have a little bit of both. Like it gets kind of monotonous to just surf like a perfect waist high wave.
For sure.
You know, like if it's like, you know, Scorpion Bay is a great example. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but like when Scorps is big, you can take off and get barreled on a shortboard, and then 2 points down, you can ride a longboard. So that's like the best of both worlds. But there's very few places like that, and so when you kind of like look at surfing for what it is, it's like just having the right board for the right time, right day. But yeah, how often does Ocean Beach get good? Not that much, and it's gnarly drive. You know? So like I've you know, it's one of those places. It's like always has it's like Blacks. When Blacks is good, like they turn the Surfline cam off or something. Some reason it's always down. When Blacks is good, and you're like, oh dang, I should go down there. It's only an hour away, and like there's something that keeps you from it. Sometimes and you're like, I'll just go longboard Sano. It's easy. You know, like so it's a bit of that, like figuring out, you know, whether it's the right thing to do or not. I feel like for me, what drives me is the work ethic of like wanting to be engaged in and just, you know, for the brands I work for, just working hard on like putting out stuff that like I'm stoked to put out and inspired. I think a lot of it for me is just like, is this photo really going to be like something that like is worth like, you know, kind of putting out there, or is it just like, oh, I surfed Santa today? And that's kind of been a bit of, you know, because it depends on where you're from too. Like there's days at Santa that look amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do when it's like 7 days in a row of just 1 foot?
That's the thing. Like you have to have like, I've been dealing with that the last month. It's been pretty bad, and like so you really got to go deep into the archives of like places you've been, things you do, and
content. He travels during this time, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Usually, I mean, like in the past, like usually the spring I'd spend in British Columbia, and then like in the fall I'd go to the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia, and that was just like kind of repeat for 6-7 years of just like chasing hurricane swells, East Coast when hurricanes.
We've heard a lot of Nova Scotia.
I know, it keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Everyone keeps saying we should go there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of everything there. It's just really open and lots of water, and you know, it rains and snows and the ocean freezes, so there's a lot going on. But it's cool. We've had some really great trips there with great waves, and in the culture there it's like first world. It's like being here. They've got everything, you know, movie theaters, the whole thing. But then outside of town, you can get like 10 minutes outside town. It's like living in Northern California or something. You're just like really far away from everything, like super quick.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is a really cool place. But I surfed a river in Moncton, New Brunswick, which was right behind Nova Scotia, and the Bay of Fundy is a place you guys have to go. Like, place is unreal.
I gotta see it.
Say it one more time. What is it?
It's called Moncton, but the river is called the Petitcodiac. You can look. I did like it's crazy. We did an episode of ABC Nightline
Nightline?
Is that how you spell it?
Yeah, I don't even know how to spell Moncton.
Moncton.
Just type in
Moncton.
like tidal bore.
Oh my god.
Oh, so it's not a river wave.
It's a
tidal board.
It's a tidal board, river
Okay,
wave. Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. Just shoot it. I don't even know. JJ Wessels tidal board, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds right. No, well, you'd have to type in like the specific one though.
Like TIG.
Just put my name. Maybe that'll help. Yeah.
You say bore or board?
Bore. Yeah, BOR. Yeah. Sorry, I can't see that far right now. Rising
18-mile long Canadian wave.
There you go. Yeah. See the pictures there, like the surfing a bore. Yeah, that CBC. That.
Oh,
board.
what?
Yeah. So this is like the.
Is that you on the news?
Yeah, we did, dude. It was so gnarly. We did like it went like viral across Canada, and the wave was like,
What? That was so fun.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
sick. It was actually
Thousands of
sick
people.
longboard waves. So this was like way after, but when we were the first people to get back in the river here, and no one had been in that river in like something like 50 years.
Like at all? Is there like chemicals in there?
No, I mean they had like a sewage treatment plant. There's a city there of like 150,000 that they just dumped the sewage into the water.
Oh god.
So it was pretty gross, but
Yeah.
but we
It was
didn't
like
know
brown
that.
as fuck. Look how brown it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it's like
Like
straight up,
toxic.
it's Willy Wonka, no joke.
that guy's
I don't think that's
trucking
the
it.
same river though.
I saw the video of the Chinese boar.
Yeah,
That one's really
gnarly.
big. The reason this one's small though is because there's a dam that blocks the outflow, so there's not as much water going out. So the water that comes in, they just basically took half the dam down. So this became like a big it was crazy. We became pawns in this huge like activist situation where like these people were like, let's get rid of the dam, bring back the salmon, which is great. And then there's the people that have the nice houses on the other side of the dam where there's the lake that they run their boats on.
They're like, no.
They're
way.
like, don't do it. So there's this huge feud.
Oh man.
And
You're
it
just
turned
there
in, I'm
surfing.
like, I'm just here to surf.
Yeah.
It was really crazy. But this was like 10 years ago. It's like,
Wow.
I wonder who won.
I don't know if the dam's completely gone or what's the deal, but yeah, it was just to go up there and surf this though was really special. It was like we had like Sea-Doo sponsored it, and so we had 2 skis, and it was 22 miles was the wave. It was 22 kilometers.
Holy
so it was
shit.
like 19 miles. Something
That's
like that.
exhausting.
And dude, it was 3 hours of surfing.
No way.
Yeah. So every 12 hours you get 3 hours of a tidal bar.
But if you fall, the Seager just picks you up. You get back in front.
I mean, but the thing is, it's only one wave, so you miss like a good part of it, like where it's like really peeling.
Yeah.
You have to wait 12 hours to surf that spot
Oh
again.
my god.
Interesting.
So you'd fall and be like, oh no.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you gotta-
devastating.
But it was pretty rad. Like, so we started naming the spots. Like, oh, here's Alpha Point, Bravo Point. Like,
Whoa.
we named all these spots in the river, and they were changing. You know, like depending on how much
Yeah.
rain there was or how much outflow, the wave wouldn't be exactly the same. So, I mean, even if you went back there now, it'd be an entirely different place because it's rained, you know, for a couple of years, whatever. So it's every day was kind of a bit different. We spent like a week on the river, and it was cool. It was just like something so far out of my world, but the language there was like this Creole type French. It was like I don't know, like they all spoke English, but majority of the people spoke like this
Interesting.
Creole French. I don't even know what they call it, but it's like a Canadian French. And so you got these farmers from like basically podunk nowhere using their tractors to like get us down into the water, put the skis in the water, and like it was like very outside. It'd be like going to Kansas and surfing. You know, it was.
And this
very
is
outside
Nova
of our-
Scotia still.
This
on
is
the other
New
side?
Brunswick, so it'd be like basically
That's
going to
its own
Arizona.
country.
Its own state.
Oh, it's on state. with-
Province. They call them provinces, but
So it's all
its own
Canada.
province. It's all Canada. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like to be exposed to that, like really, like you go out to the Bay of Fundy and it's like this crazy, like it's like the Grand Canyon, like for real. Like when the tide goes out 50 feet, there's like crazy sculpture, and then when the tide comes up, it's all covered with water. So like every 12 hours, you get this like
Gnarly.
change.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like the stuff that you see, you're just like, whoa, there's these standing waves, like in that when the water's going out, these waves form, and they're like perfect barrels. It's like, but you probably die if you surfed them. Like there's so much
Just
water
suck
going
you
out. But it's just cool to see that stuff, like the marriage of like, you know, kind of maybe like the way it used to be in some ways of California. Like, oh yeah, cool. It's like you're pioneering, you're coming out here. There's this whole like Western aspect of like the development and like culture, and then you've got surfing that kind of like came in its own way, you know, through the Duke and stuff. But like it's like the same thing there. You kind of had this like Duke experience where you're like introducing surfing to a culture of people that like would never ever know it, and like you're like, wow, okay, that was that's kind of like the channel that got me away from really caring about contests. Because I realized, like, dude, there's so much more to like
more
life.
community engagement.
Yeah.
And now people are surfing that again. You said.
Yeah, I mean,
Go
I
back in
think
the
there's there's a people that like consistently surf there now. Like there's a surf.
Wow.
There's definitely like shops like near there.
Damn.
There's a full little cult to it, I guess. I don't know.
That's sick.
It's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, I think the people that really surf in Nova Scotia probably look at that as a joke.
Yeah.
I would probably too. Like it'd be like talking about Rick Kane in Arizona, you know? Like,
Yeah.
there's a wave pool, but it's not really.
Yeah.
It's not really a wave pool, per se. So,
Damn.
but I'm sure
That's
that's eventually what's going to happen in surfing is you're going to have.
Coliseums.
Yeah, but my hope is like we stick to like this vibe, you know? Like,
Oh yeah.
I would love to see a wave pool that like keeps like trees around it, some grass.
I feel like there'll be both,
Like-
right? There'll be that.
San
There'll be
Juan
some
wanted
weird
that.
ass.
Dude,
I know, it's close.
I wanted that.
I know.
Yeah.
Like,
Equestrian wave pool.
yeah,
Would've
I'm
been awesome.
down.
I
I think
know.
that sounds super
Honestly,
cool.
sounds rad.
Yeah.
I know. There'll be that for sure. I feel like there'll be both. It'll be like whoever's pumping money into it, and they'll have their own weird interests behind it.
Yeah.
Could
You know?
could you guys see Seager having a wave pool?
Oh yeah, we just need a couple
100%.
$100 million. I'm down.
Would you guys put a wave pool in your office?
In it? Fuck yeah.
Why
Oh
not?
yeah.
I would do.
That sounds great. Yeah. I mean, why not?
Our
right?
headquarters
You
is
still surf
the
the
wave
beach.
pool.
You know, you
Is
just do
that the
both.
goal? Would you rather have a wave pool or
No.
have like a basketball court?
Oh, I don't
wave
like
pool.
basketball.
No basketball.
I'm no basketball, no golf, no 80s. That's my three things right now.
But I'm not into golf either.
Yeah.
You said no
Okay,
golf?
fuck yeah. I'm like the only guy usually that fights for that. The last few, I'm just like bullied. You guys are bullying.
No.
Yeah, right.
Well, you guys said earlier something about like relationship
golf.
between golf and
him.
Yeah.
surfing.
I was
He
just
loves
saying
that.
surfing and golf have similar.
Oh yeah, that
And I was
the
shaking my
last
head like,
show.
please don't go there. No,
That
I'm
was
just
so funny. There's actually a lot of brands now doing that. There's like golf surf brands. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen
kidding. I know.
I feel like it's like he hates golf. I'm intermediate, and he's like
Yeah.
Mr. Golf guy.
it. Yeah.
I literally probably golf less than you golf.
Mattson is slowly turning into Mr.
I just know.
Golf, though.
I just
He's
know
Mr.
that there's
Golf over here.
similarities.
Will there be a similarity between Seager and golf?
No
No.
chance. If I have any
But
say on it,
We
I'll
there
all
have a
is.
love
chance.
golfing.
There is one painting here of these two cowboys.
That's yours.
yeah, but still.
I would throw that bitch away.
It's an
bro.
old school painting, two cowboys in their cowboy hats, and they're just like golfing
Yeah.
with the backcountry, like not even aiming for holes.
Have you guys seen the Golfer's Journal? You ever
No.
read that?
Yeah.
There's a Surfer's Journal, but for golf.
Yeah, I
Oh
haven't seen that.
God.
And there's like literally rad, like retro, cool photos.
Yeah.
Like
Kevin Schultz was just telling us
Old
about that.
golf is
Yeah.
sick. Oh yeah, he was showing us the funny shit.
Yeah.
Is that Instagram where it's just like
That's
people
John
getting
Daly.
pissed off?
Well, he told us about Golfer's Journal too.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
old golf's cool, right? There's people out there doing cool shit, but I mean, I watched Happy Gilmore. That's a great movie.
Yeah. What's the big golfer's name with like the crazy
John Daly.
We were just
That
looking
guy's-
that
yeah.
up. I
See,
know.
no,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
He's sick. Yeah.
There's
Exactly.
cool parts
hope.
to it.
There's some hope.
Yeah.
There's
But the actual
points there.
golfing, it's like I don't care about the golfing. I just like that guy. I could watch him do stand up
you can
and be
be
fine
that
with
guy.
that.
You could live that.
Yeah, but I'd want to be him, but not
Dude,
golf.
Golfing is fun because you can just go down on the course and
Yeah.
a nice, like, beautiful day and
Drive a golf cart.
And have a
Get a
guy yell at
fucking
you.
ball.
Here's $100. You give it to him,
Wait, who's
You
yelling?
always say that.
and then here's the
You
marshal.
always say that.
And he knocks on your golf cart,
That's not happening.
and he says, "Hey,
Anyways,
Mattson."
I'm intermediate. I like it. And I also don't care.
You're so funny. I can honestly say I've never actually paid for a game of golf. I don't think I've ever played a game of golf.
You've never played a game
I've
of golf
snuck on and got kicked off
by the marshal.
Probably.
See?
It was super hot. We took our shirts off. We got kicked out. So
Just to
it's just
swim,
the-
or what were you doing?
No, it was just hot. So I was just like,
What do you mean? You just
took my
ran to
shirt
the
off.
golf course to take your shirt off?
No,
and
no,
run
we were
around.
playing golf. We like snuck in.
Oh.
It was actually San Juan Hills.
Hit some
We snuck
balls.
on the course. We got in the back. and
Yeah, yeah.
It was like a par, whatever, simple hole. I don't
Yeah.
even know what you call it, but
Yeah, par
it wa-
easy.
Yeah, easy with like
Yeah.
there's basically a little lake and it was like a 2-shot to the hole.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool, we'll just play this one. So we just hopped in front of these people and we were like carrying our stuff. And my dad, I'm left-handed, so my dad had these clubs I just took from the garage. I didn't know what I had. I was just swinging whatever. And like the first 3 shots I hit into the houses and then
Oh my
realized
God.
like, okay, I've got to figure out the right club. I literally know nothing about golf.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that, but like
there you
I
go.
couldn't see myself like
Getting into it.
doing, what is it, 4 hours for a game
Yeah.
of golf?
18 holes.
How do you, I don't know where you find that.
I don't know. I mean, it's
Interest.
retired people, right? It's just old men.
So
Are you-
I live in Capo Beach, overlooking the Short Cliffs Golf Course.
Okay.
and I am blown away by the amount of motherfuckers that go out there every day. Like
Oh, yeah.
literally 6 a.m. There's guys like 4.
Yeah.
I'm like,
They're yelling that shit?
all day long.
Doesn't that mean you had a bad
day.
shot?
Yelling that at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you notice like the way they're playing, like before, early morning, and then they start drinking, and by the time
Yeah.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
like kind
So
of.
I'm in
I get hammered
I'm in a
every
unique
time.
See,
scenario.
that's the thing. There's like the whole nation golf crew.
Oh, you're there to drink.
I figured out that that's just a drinking thing.
It's just a
Yeah,
drinking
yeah.
thing.
I get
Do
it.
you live in San Juan?
I do.
Okay, I do too.
Oh, sweet.
We'll grab a coffee, go to the driving
Oh,
range.
God.
No,
See, that's how
I'm
they
not
get you,
gonna pull me
dude.
in.
That's what I'm saying.
Honestly, I do just, especially now, I'm like,
Dude.
no way, I don't have time for that.
Anything that the whole parking lot is just full of like little Mercedes sedans, and you're just like, all right.
Elliott.
It's
stop.
funny.
You're like, I know, there's so much hate on me this show.
Yeah,
Everyone's like, bro.
yeah.
What's
No, we're
actually
not trying to
funny
dog
is
I'm just being funny.
I'm like the
kidding.
golf guy right now.
You-
but I've
you look
probably
like the
golfed
golf guy,
less
dude.
than 20 times in my life.
Oh, don't back yourself
So
up.
funny.
I know.
No,
He's
I'm
like,
just saying,
I'm
like,
cool. I
I'm
don't
not even
golf.
a good golfer, and like I don't go often at all.
Can
Do
we
you
pull up
watch golf?
Kevin
Like,
Kevin Schultz's,
No, I don't watch golf or anything.
interview?
I love golf.
At all. Golf is comparatively hard as
God.
surfing.
Golf, surfing, and hockey are the 3 hardest sports.
Depends who the guest is.
Were you
right?
just jamming with Kevin Schultz on golf? He's like, yeah, I went
I
golf
think
today. You're
golf
like, yeah,
is super
Kevin.
fun.
Yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
think golf is super fun. I love doing it, but there's not often times when I'm gonna go commit to it, and I don't have like
It's a
all my
leisure
closest
activity.
friends don't play that often, and they're all better than me. So it's just like
Yeah.
I like playing.
It's a leisure
I'll
activity.
play as much
You're
as
just
I
hanging
can,
out.
Right.
but I don't play that often.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, if it like keeps you going and being
Yeah.
outside, like
Yeah.
there's parts of golf I'm like stoked on, but what's so funny is like I think people think like you look at a golf course and you're like, oh yeah, it's like it's I don't know, great for
Chemicals.
an environment,
Yeah.
whatever. But like if you try to build a wave pool in San Juan, they're like, no, that's too much water.
So crazy.
But then a golf course probably uses twice as
Oh
much.
my God, the amount of chemicals and shit,
Yeah.
dude.
One of the kids
chance.
at Sano like told me this story. It was crazy. He was like, you think about like surfing. You go surf every day. You spend like an hour at the beach, whatever. Like people are like, oh wow, what are you doing with your life, right? That's like common for most surfers.
Yeah.
But if you go to the gym every day for an hour, everyone's like, oh, you're working out. That's
Getting
good.
after
That's
it.
good. Right on, you're getting after it.
Yeah.
You go. What'd you do today? I golfed 3 times this week. All right, cool.
Yeah, you're like, wow,
Like-
what a waste of money.
That's how I think. That's probably how you think.
spend money on it. Yeah.
But isn't it interesting how like
Oh,
how,
yeah.
how you're skewed as a person
Oh,
to
yeah.
think like, oh, if you're surfing, you go to the beach for like a couple hours, you work on
Get a job.
skills, you need to get a job.
I know.
But if you go golf, like it's
I know.
it's,
I
it's
know.
just really interesting how
I agree.
the
It's
culture
sophisticated, right?
That's
is the worst part.
That's a good part, though. That's a good thing. 'Cause
Of
that
what,
means-
surf or golf?
I think that's.
What are you defending right now?
I'm defending the fact that people think that surfing is a bum sport because that means less people will surf and there'll be less crowds.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that worked, but fortunately,
It used to work. It used to work back like
That's true.
even
That's
10
true.
years ago or like 20 years ago. That was
Yeah,
the whole
you're
sentiment.
right.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, but to play off your point, like, and you were talking about college earlier about how it should be trade schools. I agree with that. But I think, like, you think about like a kid that grew up skateboarding or surfing, like he has no college hope, like zero.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play golf, you could go to college for
Oh
free.
fuck yeah!
So
Yeah,
I mean,
full ride.
I think actually San Diego State just gave the first ever surf
saw that.
scholarship.
Yeah.
Oh really?
So it's like, wow, okay, like there's an actual surfer that gets a scholarship to go to school for free.
That's cool. Yeah.
As a surfer, which is like
Probably not even free too. It's probably like
Yeah.
10% off or
I
something.
wonder who got that.
Right.
I know. Honestly, what an honor.
I
He's
mean,
probably
that's great.
really, really good at
It
surfing.
makes a lot of sense.
But it's just sad. To me, it's always been kind of one of those things where it's like, not that I've ever been driven to go to school, but like you wonder why these people look at it and they kind of say, oh, it's a bum sport. Well,
Yeah.
the reality is the reasons there's no support for
Yeah.
it. And I think that's like so hard for me to understand with ball sports. Like at football players, I'm like, yeah, are you really? What are you going to do? You're going to play college football,
Yeah.
probably get hurt,
Yeah.
and then deal with your knee injury the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Well, there's the
I
silver
know.
lining of
There's just nothing else
the
going
point
on.
of that?
Yeah, but your whole talent.
But I
that's
went
all
to
you
USC.
got.
Like,
I know.
right on.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
I don't know.
But there's the silver lining of what we were talking about earlier, where the WSL is so corporate, but they're bringing in this side where you.
The money.
That's probably why SDSU even has the scholarship now.
Money.
Because they're growing it.
They're
There's
growing.
video game
I think it's the
sponsorships,
Olympics,
man.
which is actually the
Oh.
ISA, International Surfing Association, which has nothing to do with WSL.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
ISL's cool too. Yeah.
Which I think the ISA is doing
Or
a pretty
ISA,
good job. Is
yeah.
like they've brought in like every country. They've created this like unity within like the sport of surfing.
Yeah.
Without commercializing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I think the WSL is like a media company. I think people
Yeah.
just need to admit that they just create They're just
Right.
creating media.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if they were just to stand on that and say, okay, all we're doing is like basically becoming, we just record every heat. We brag about it. We talk about every surfer, and that's like who we are, what we do.
Yeah.
And like then it would be like a lot more palatable, as opposed to like, it's just hard for me to palate and understand like the fact that like the WSL controls so much of the conversations. Like we're talking about that here. It's like, man, I'd be more interested to see surfing just talked about from the perspective of like, hey, did you see that board that Tyler Warren just shaped, or like Chris Christensen just built? Like, no, what do you mean? Oh, you just did a model? What is that? Because that is like, I don't know, that's just so underappreciated, I think, and under like even like talked about in the sense of like the whole like kind of, I guess I don't know, culture of it, or whatever the word is,
Good point.
So but I think like, I mean, dude, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, I know, right?
What time are we at?
I don't know.
We're at 145.
Holy
Oh,
shit.
we're past due at that point. That's good. It's nice
And
not
I still
seeing
have more
time.
things I want to talk about, but and this is a great conversation.
You'll never be able to talk
Thank
again.
you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
There we go.